President Peterson.
Here.
Regent Greavy. Here. Regent Atwell.
Here.
Regent Bechtel.
Here.
Regent Delgado.
Here.
Regent Hall.
Here.
Regent Jones.
Here.
Regent Klein. Regent Lovezo. Regent Menedides. Regent Mueller.
Here.
Regent Peterson.
Here.
Regent Plant.
Here.
Regent Stanford Taylor.
Here.
Regent Tiedemann.
Here.
Regent Walsh.
Here.
Regent Whitburn.
Here.
Regent Woodmansee.
Here.
All members present.
Thank you. As we start today's agenda, are there any board members who wish to declare a conflict of interest with today's agenda? All right, hearing none, let's move forward. The minutes of the June 6th and 7th, 2019 Board of Regents meeting have been provided. May I have a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. I am going to pass it off to President Cross to make some morning introductions. President Cross.
Thank you, Regent President, almost said Bailey, Peterson.
You're welcome, President Riley.
We're off to a good start. So thank you. We are very pleased to have some special guests with us this morning, members of the higher education delegation from Hessen, Germany. So would you please stand and let us welcome you. Last September, we sent our own delegation to Germany to celebrate 20 years of this formal partnership. It's been longer than that, but formal. That partnership between the state of Hessen and the UW system, and of course the state of Wisconsin. This Hessen-Wisconsin program was initiated in 1998 and expanded the long-established cooperation between our two sister states by offering a formalized student exchange for all Hessen and Wisconsin institutions of higher education. Over the years, more than 900 students from Wisconsin have studied in Hessen, while more than 500 students from Hessen have in turn studied here in Wisconsin. Beyond the very successful student exchange, Hessen also places exchange students in internships with companies, organizations, or institutions that match student interests. This very successful exchange seeks to further enhance international knowledge, cultural competencies, and linguistic skills on both sides. So we certainly enjoyed hosting these folks last evening at our house, and I, in particular, heard from a number of those present that they would like to particularly thank Engu for stealing my remarks. Thank you. They didn't want to hear those. I would also like to say thank you and compliments to Jay Brato for the Lions gifts, and to all of you, and we put him out here in front. This is a gift from Hessen to the system of Wisconsin. And I would also like to thank Regent Atwell, who so eloquently and effectively greeted our Hessen colleagues in what I believe was perfect German. Of course, So we are delighted that these Hessen University presidents and other representatives could join us today and last evening. And I know they have to head over to the Wisconsin Institute for Discovery shortly and then on to Chicago, but we certainly do appreciate you being here, and we value our partnership very much, so thank you.
Thank you, President Cross. The Wisconsin Technical College System Board met earlier this week. The report will be provided at our next meeting. Before offering my first official report as president of this board, I'd like to express my sincere thanks for your support. It's been my privilege to work alongside you as we serve the University of Wisconsin system and the people of Wisconsin, and I look forward with great optimism to the time ahead. One thing I will pledge right now, I will continue to be a tenacious advocate for the UW system. The UW system is Wisconsin's economic driver and the best investment our taxpayers can make. We are returning $23 for every dollar invested in us. We're graduating a record number of students, over 36,000 for each of the last 6 years, the majority of whom build careers, raise families, and settle here. We're producing groundbreaking research that leads to the creation of companies and family-sustaining jobs. I want us to harness the power of the system, of our graduates, our faculty, and staff to grow the Wisconsin economy and to make our state the envy of the Midwest. I joined the board in 2013, and since then we've taken numerous steps to restore accountability in the system and add unprecedented transparency to the public. We've invested in high-growth science, technology, engineering, and math programs and established key performance measures. And we have added substantial emphasis on student success. If you have any questions about how we're doing, just visit our accountability dashboard at the wisconsin.edu website. As board president, I will be a pragmatic leader focused on building on momentum in these areas. Specifically, I want to emphasize the overlapping goals of student success and driving the Wisconsin economy. We know high-impact practices like undergraduate research, internships, and co-ops help students progress toward a degree and better develop a mastery of their field of study. We also know those experiences provide the kind of workforce readiness our employers are craving. I want to grow these areas, especially internships, where UW systems students are already outpacing students nationally. It's also time we take a closer look at behavioral health on our campuses. With 2 teenagers of my own, I can appreciate the new and increased stress and pressure students face. The Board of Regents is examining and analyzing the increasing level of stress-related anxiety on our campuses. And one of my initial priorities is to make sure all of our campuses are employing best practices, both operationally and financially, to help campus communities succeed in combating this unfortunate epidemic. Turning from an emotional issue to an economic issue, the Republican-led legislature and Democratic Governor Tony Evers, former regent and lifelong educator, just completed work on the state biennial budget process. While we didn't receive everything we sought, we are very pleased the legislature and the governor recognize how important it is to repair, renovate, and replace our aging infrastructure, especially in key STEM fields. An over $1 billion infusion of capital project investments is the accelerant our campuses and Wisconsin's economy needs, and it comes at exactly the right time. As we make the case for higher education support and continued reinvestment, consider this. On average, people who hold an undergraduate degree earn over $1 million more in their lifetime than those who do not. Wisconsin public institutions are the economic and cultural lifeblood of their communities. Cutting-edge research conducted by the UW system changes lives, and degree attainment is critical to grow Wisconsin's workforce. We know UW system's institutions offer some of the most affordable tuition in the Midwest and the nation. Given we provide incredible value, we, as a board, must ensure we do not allow quality to dilute. It's just too important. Today, I'm announcing the launch of an aggressive statewide campaign to spotlight and showcase this incredible value for students, families, and taxpayers that are provided by every institution of the University of Wisconsin system. Starting in September, we will combine forces, starting with my fellow regents, system leadership, chancellors, business and community leaders, campus community members, legislators, and of course students, to mobilize our All in Wisconsin initiative. We want to more broadly share the benefits and value our campuses offer their regions and the state. We want to listen and learn more about what we can better do to serve the people of Wisconsin. And we want to mobilize and unleash citizens' passion for this great university system. I'm excited to build on the momentum that this board and our UW system has generated over the last 4 years. Today, I'm asking all of you in this room to join me. With the Wisconsin economy healthy and firing on all cylinders, there's no better time for us to make this case, and we don't have the time to waste. That concludes my report. President Cross.
Thank you, Regent President. I had to do that on purpose.
So just keep doing it all day.
Thank you for those really appreciated remarks. Now for news from around the system.
UW-Oshkosh art students in a digital fabrication class recently gained real-world professional experience working with one of the community's most prestigious employers, Oshkosh Defense. The students created innovative designs for the company's new People First Recognition Awards program. Final designs will be manufactured for a fall award ceremony. More than 70 UW Superior faculty, staff, and community members attended the Mindfulness Leadership Workshop at the Yellow Jacket Union. Sponsored by the campus Pruitt Center for Mindfulness and Well-Being in coordination with Arizona State, the event brought participants together to have conversations about the importance of healthfulness, personal balance, and resiliency. UW Parkside recently honored a former chancellor at the dedication of the new Alan E. Guskin Center for Community and Business Engagement. The facility honors the vision and legacy of the university's second chancellor, Dr. Guskin, who established the university's commitment to creating mutually beneficial partnerships with the community. Today, more than 1,500 UW Parkside students engage in community-based learning and internships with more than 100 partners each year. UW-Stout School of Engineering students are using their knowledge to benefit workers in Wisconsin. Students built a system to help automate bed box frame production at the Career Development Center in Eau Claire. The system boosts production, improves safety, and helps workers learn new skills. Manufacturing engineering major Alex Kowalczyk said, "It feels great knowing we are doing something to impact people's lives." UW Stevens Point students not only learn useful information in a molecular biology course, they also conduct research for Prevention Genetics, a genetics testing laboratory in Marshfield. This gives students valuable research and lab experience and a significant competitive advantage when they graduate. In fact, several Point grads have already been hired by the firm. This fall, high school students in River Falls can earn college credit before ever stepping onto the UW River Falls campus. A groundbreaking dual credit agreement with the River Falls School District offers students the chance to take approved UW courses. The program is designed to be an affordable investment for students interested in banking college credits and experiencing the rigor and personal responsibility crucial to success in college. At UW-Platteville, innovation and workforce development is at the forefront of two upcoming building projects to begin next year. Faculty and staff input have been instrumental in designing collaborative learning areas, a green roof, and other hands-on experiences that will make Science Building, Babel Hall, and new engineering building, Sesquicentennial Hall, living learning classrooms. In the last year, nearly 8,500 companies have sought out students from UW-Madison to meet their talent needs. The companies often work through the Office of Business Engagement to set up mock interview sessions, classroom projects, and even job shadowing. They also meet with students at large-scale career fairs on campus. UW lacrosse student Savannah Stanley recently received a U.S. State Department Benjamin A. Gilman International Scholarship to study during spring semester in San Jose, Costa Rica. The scholarship enables students to study or intern abroad, thereby gaining skills critical to our national security and economic competitiveness. Stanley says the experience gave her confidence to communicate and travel internationally. UW Green Bay's Maruf Hossein will receive the 2019 Carl E. Gulbranson Innovator of the Year Award by WISIS. As a teacher and inventor, this assistant professor of engineering technology has helped build a culture of innovation on campus and across the UW system. His interest in electrical power systems and renewable energy, along with help from research grants, led him to research and develop wind turbines. UW-Eau Claire students have launched Clearwater Labs, a 100% student-run software consulting company in downtown Eau Claire that's on track to become self-funded and self-sustaining. The students work as a team providing technology solutions to area businesses. One project, an energy dashboard, advanced to the third round of the Smart Cities Smart Futures competition, earning a $1,500 prize. A UW-Whitewater political science major took part in a life-changing study abroad experience in Central America. Kayla White traveled to El Salvador, where she had the chance to take part in historical presidential elections and witness a landmark Supreme Court case involving the country's civil war. UW-Milwaukee's newly opened Lubar Entrepreneurship Center is making entrepreneurship an even more integral part of the UWM experience for students, faculty, and staff. The center is bringing together numerous programs across all disciplines to nurture ideas and build confidence. The result? Supporting entrepreneurs and changemakers that thrive on innovation.
Well, as you can see, there are a number of things, exciting things happening around the UW system. Next, we have the faculty spotlight for the benefit of newer regents. This is a semi-regular feature at the board meetings, along with our student spotlight. We invest this time because we think it's important to help the public better understand what faculty do, what their workload includes, what it really means to be a member of UW System's celebrated faculty, and to show everyone their commitment to teaching, learning, research, and of course, service. So today I'm pleased to welcome Dr. Nicholas Bakken, an associate professor in the Department of Sociology and Criminal Justice at UW-La Crosse. Nick received his undergraduate degree from UWL before going to earn his master's and PhD from the University of Delaware. Among his research interests are criminal offending across the life course, desistance from crime, substance abuse, and juvenile delinquency. So I believe we are going to introduce Dr. Bakken with a brief video at this time.
The interesting thing about my job is that every single day is different, which is why I love it so much. And I tell students all the time that my job doesn't feel like a job to me because I love what I do. Criminology is something that was always a great interest to me. I could examine why people are engaged in these behaviors, some of the structural reasons why some people might be more likely to commit crime or use drugs compared to others. Sociology and criminal justice and the field of criminology in general provided me a forum in which I could answer some of those complex questions, use evidence-based practices to recommend solutions to what can be done and to make the system better and to make the community safer. You know, it really is reciprocal, the relationships that we've developed, not only with practitioners within the city of La Crosse, but also the community stakeholders that live here. We're on a number of different task forces. Dr. Cruz is on the Criminal Justice Management Council. I'm on a number of advisory boards. We have developed such strong relationships that those practitioners are willing to come back into our classrooms. They're willing to come and talk to our students, be guest lecturers. They're willing to help students get internships, had students that have become employed because of some of the networking and connections we've been able to provide to them based upon our work in the community. Our students work on a number of our projects. They collect data with us. They help analyze data. They write technical reports. So we have students that are transcribing interviews that we're conducting with drug court clients. We have students that are collecting baseline interviews within the jail and the community with men and women who are incarcerated. So it's really invaluable. It provides an applied experience for students that they may not get otherwise, while also illustrating some of the current social problems that exist, not only within the La Crosse community, but within the state of Wisconsin and also nationally. A good teacher to me is someone that not only provides an excellent experience within the classroom, but someone that seeks out students outside of class to mentor them in terms of undergraduate research and internships, and allows them to be a part of faculty research projects, Eagle apprenticeships, teaching apprenticeships, and really helps mentor them on an individual basis. It's different for every single student in terms of how you know you're connecting with them. For some, it could be something as simple as someone who's normally reserved and quiet in the classroom starts to come out of their shell. Others, it's you don't necessarily know until they come after class and meet with you individually and start having conversations about topics that are related to the material that you're talking about in class, but are affecting us in a real world kind of applied sense. I hope students realize that the excitement and the enthusiasm and the passion that I try to bring into the classroom and into my meetings with them is genuine. And that I truly do not only care about the subjects that I teach and my discipline, but I care about them as students, as individuals, and that I want them to be successful. The best compliment that I can ever get is to understand that you might not know it while they're here, but when students contact you after the fact, when they graduate and say, it was because of this type of experience or because of this class that really changed the way that I think about things or allowed me to be successful in the field that I'm in, that's the most meaningful thing to me in terms of success.
So let's welcome Professor Bach.
No? Better? There we go. Okay. Thank you, President Cross and Regents, for having me here today. When I originally was asked to do this, one of the things I was asked to think about was the Wisconsin idea. And the Wisconsin idea to me is something that's been a part of my life as early as I can remember. My mom worked on this campus for more than 30 years, and when she would come home and we would sit down for dinner as a family, she would tell us about all the interesting and innovative research that was happening on this campus, much of it that was benefiting the public in a myriad of ways. And my entire sense of what a university is and should be was shaped by the idea that a university should and could utilize its resources to help make our state and the citizens that live in this state better. I grew up in Wisconsin, as President Cross said. I received my bachelor's degree at UW-La Crosse and was fortunate to return to the alma mater that I loved so much after graduate school. In the 10 years since I've been back at UWL, I've been fortunate to work in collaboration with numerous community partners as a data analyst, as a program evaluator, as an advisory board member on important initiatives aimed at making our community and local criminal justice system and its programming more effective and evidence-based. Working with community stakeholders, including the La Crosse Police Department, the School District of La Crosse, the Health and Human Services offices, and others, my colleagues and I were asked to examine juvenile arrest data within the city of La Crosse. And what we found was that La Crosse actually had one of the highest rates, juvenile arrest rates for students of color in the entire state of Wisconsin. As a criminologist and understanding the short and long-term impact that any criminal justice involvement can have for children, a community task force was assembled, including multiple community agencies and stakeholders, and spent multiple years examining these issues, which eventually led to what is known as the Continuum of Care program in La Crosse. And this program works to divert students away from the criminal justice program and instead to available community resources for the child and their family as needed. We're also currently working on a formal evaluation of La Crosse County Drug Treatment Court in conjunction with the National Center for State Courts. Our aim is to identify the strengths and weaknesses of that program so that we can provide recommendations to better serve the clients in that program and the larger community in which they live in. Additionally, I'm working on a Bureau of Justice Assistance funded grant with the La Crosse County Jail and Justice Support Services Office to develop and implement a program that connects men and women with co-occurring mental health and substance abuse disorders to available resources upon their release into the community. These men and women are some of the highest risk and most vulnerable in the system, yet they often lack the basic resources that they need to even survive once they're released from jail. Many of whom, in our particular study, have been arrested more than 100 times. We've brought together multiple stakeholders who are working to ease this transition in the community, and I'm collecting vast amounts of data at multiple time points to evaluate programmatic effectiveness and hopefully secure long-term funding for this much-needed program in our community. So the collaborative work that I and many other faculty across our campus regularly do is, in my opinion, both extraordinary and necessary. Personally, my work has been reciprocal concerning my teaching, my research, and my service responsibilities as a faculty member at UWL. I involve a number of students at every stage of the research process for every project that I'm a part of, and this has resulted in numerous internships, research apprenticeships, undergraduate research grants for our students. And all these things are invaluable, both in an applied sense, but also in terms of the social networking they get, all of which inevitably helps them in terms of graduate school and obtaining employment upon graduating from UWL. Additionally, when I can bring real issues back that are affecting the community and current data into the classroom, they become excited. And students become excited to better understand the complex and multifaceted problems facing our community, and they're eager to work towards evidence-based solutions and public policy. They learn that these problems are complex, and most importantly, considering the work that I do and the populations that I serve, they realize that behind all these social problems are actual people who have significant problems, many of whom, in the studies that I work with, have endured significant trauma and have experienced pain that most of us probably can't even experience and understand. Our collaborative work has brought numerous guest speakers to our classes. We've held panels for students comprised of community practitioners in lacrosse. The Department of Corrections has come in and provided a prisoner reentry panel multiple times for students and staff and community members. And I regularly take my classes to state prisons for tours and also to do Q&As with current inmates and current DOC staff. All of this has been instrumental for our students and would not be possible if not for the close professional working relationships we've created in conjunction with our community partners. So finally, ultimately, what I believe is our students come to understand the same lesson that I learned as a kid listening to my mom talk about the great work that was being done on this campus and across the UW system, is that our students can take the skills, the knowledge, and the experience gained from their UW education and use it to affect positive social change at a larger level. To me, this is the essence of the Wisconsin idea, and I appreciate the support that all of you provide in allowing this collaboration and innovation to be a hallmark of our system, and encourage everyone to continue to make that a priority. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Bakken. Any questions from the board?
I have a question. You implied that your mother was doing education, she was a teacher at
So she was actually a department manager in the computer science department on campus. So I was always surrounded by,
Oh, you're a native, man.
I was always surrounded by academics my entire life.
That's great.
Yeah,
Glad to have you back.
thank you. Good to be back.
I think you can see why we're so proud of our faculty. I'm sorry.
I was going to ask how many students are enrolled in criminal justice at La Crosse?
So we only have a minor right now at UWL, and we have roughly 130 students that are minoring, often in conjunction with sociology, political science, psychology, accounting, a number of different programs.
Will we be seeing a major proposal in the education committee at some point?
I'm not the person to answer that question.
Sorry to put you on the hot seat.
I was the person that pushed just to rename our department the Department of Sociology and Criminal Justice, and I will let the people at a higher pay grade decide whether
Good answer.
that becomes a major.
Thank you, Dr. Bakken.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it very much. Turning now to an update on the biennial budget process. Last week, obviously, Governor Evers signed the 2019-2021 state budget. So the capital portion of the budget remained almost entirely intact. It was pretty impressive. The budget provides over $1.2 billion, as you've heard, and I want to thank Governor Evers for proposing such a strong investment. And I also want to thank legislative leaders who helped deliver this capital budget for us, especially Representative Nygren, Mark Bourne, and of course Senator Alberta Darling, who championed our causes in their respective caucuses. Another positive development in this budget is the inclusion of 2% compensation increase in each of the years of the biennium. This investment in our faculty and staff is crucial. Obviously, we need more, but our ability to recruit and retain talent, best and brightest we can attract, is contingent to a great extent on our ability to pay them. It is important to note that this will make it 4 years in a row that we have seen some adjustment for our faculty and staff, and we will continue to receive that as a part of this biennium. While we're making important progress on this issue of compensation, I look forward to continuing to press that issue in the next budget. As I noted yesterday, and I won't spend a lot of time on this, the operational side of the budget, we will continue to work closely with the board to develop a plan to bring that before the Joint Finance Committee and this administration to invest the $45 million made available through the Joint Finance Supplemental Account. We remain concerned that the funding provided will not allow us to make the investments necessary to maintain and expand the quality of the educational experience our students and state expects and, of course, needs. Preserving this quality as tuition remains frozen for its 7th and 8th year, and of course its 11th and 12th year for those 2-year campuses, does require an operational investment, and this will continue to be a priority for the UW system. So that concludes my report. Regent President Peterson.
Thank you, President Cross. Let's shift to our work in the committees completed yesterday. I'll now call upon Regent Whitburn to present the audit report.
Thank you, Regent President Peterson. The Audit Committee met yesterday. We had a full agenda. Our Chief Audit Executive, Laura Starks, reviewed the fiscal year 2020 audit plan, discussed the creation of the plan with an eye toward bringing our new Audit Committee members up to speed. She noted that all audit work has been assigned and provided a list of work products that will be brought before the committee and ultimately before this board beginning in both October and December. Lori then discussed the progress of management responses to previously issued audit reports. She mentioned that the audit office continues to make good progress. There's cooperation from management on clearing these audit comments. She also specifically mentioned the system security and access follow-up and the work with senior management to best address those concerns and comments. Finally, Laura discussed the status of the system security and access audits. She noted that UW-Madison was the last remaining audit report left to issue and went on to discuss data classification and protection as an audit theme across all of the institutions. We then heard from Vice President Sean Nelson and Senior Associate Vice President and our Chief Human Resources Officer, Shanita Brokenberg. They worked through with us a follow-up discussion of the Legislative Audit Bureau's Report 19-5. For new regents, I think members of our committee would encourage each of you to take time to carefully look through this audit. Some of these findings are repeat findings from the Audit Bureau, and we have work to do to straighten out some of our issues with them. Sean Nelson focused in his report in 3 areas. He talked about the tuition and enrollment trends over the last 10 years, including increases in non-resident enrollment, as well as a board policy for the percentage of non-residents gaining admission into UW system institutions. He went on to talk about the program and revenue balance reporting. We heard a little bit about that yesterday as we approved the operations budget for fiscal 20. And he talked about the nature and the extent of the UW-Oshkosh program revenue balance transfer and the progress in Oshkosh's operational budget and condition. Again, the Audit Bureau had concerns about the prudence of this transfer. Shanita then focused on the 8 recommendations from the LAB report. She discussed the themes noted and the improvements needed to the university personnel system policies, which include non-compliance, lack of consistency, and also lack of accountability. She talked about the creation of work groups to address 6 subject matter areas that are important on an ongoing basis, those being performance management, merit-based pay, extraordinary salary ranges, and this business of HRS entry codes for pay actions. Finally, she talked about the need for a cultural shift at UW System Human Resources and the extent to which we can provide at her level and her office's level technical assistance in the development of institutional policies and procedures to ensure more uniformity and consistency. Finally, she talked about the next steps in developing a response to the LAB, which this board must send forward. It needs to be there in August. The audit committee will have a special meeting in early August to review the proposed response. Finally, Quinn Williams, our counsel, of course, introduced Sarah Haribol. She's our new Title IX and Clery administrator. She's, as I pointed out yesterday, very much a grown-up in this space, has broad experience. Also nice, a Wisconsin native coming back to her home state. Sarah discussed her background, her goal to build the Office of Compliance as a resource for all, and her work to date in action collaboration. She believes that an enterprise-wide approach will work best to implement these policies within the system. That concludes my report, President Peterson.
Thank you, Regent Whitburn. At this time, we'll hear from Regent Mueller, who will provide us an update on the actions of the Business and Finance Committee from yesterday. Regent Mueller.
Thank you, Mr. President. After discussion, the Business and Finance Committee voted to approve 4 contracts, 2 offered from UW-Milwaukee and 2 from UW-Madison. The first UW-Milwaukee contract is with the Wisconsin Electric Power Company. Staff from UW-Milwaukee's College of Letters and Sciences will advise the company on the cultural impacts of the company's projects. This contract may provide revenue of up to $4.5 million over time. The second UW-Milwaukee contract is with Rockwell Automation for the company to work establishing guidelines and processes by which third parties will become members of a newly formed Connected Systems Institute, which UW-Milwaukee has founded. Over the next 5 years, the Institute expects to receive $2.5 million in investments from Rockwell and anticipates significant contributions from other future members. This institute is a very exciting concept, and I'm sure Chancellor Mone would be eager to talk to all of you about this as it advances over the years. UW-Madison's 2 contracts include one with Viewpoint Therapeutics. Over the next 5 years, the Department of Ophthalmology and Visual Sciences will conduct research related to interpretation of images in clinical studies, including studies of cataracts. The second UW-Madison contract is with a consortium of public and private entities, including, for example, the Food and Agricultural Research Foundation and Syngenta Crop Protection. The focus here is to study drought-resistant seeds, and the university is expected to receive at least $1.2 million for their work on this project. After the contracts, our discussion shifted to Shanita Brokenburr, our UW System Chief Human Resource Officer, and her Madison counterpart, Mark Walters. They gave us an update on the title and compensation project currently underway. Next steps were outlined for transitioning to a new title. This is long overdue, we heard. And anticipated changes to attract and retain and motivate our employees. We had a robust discussion about what the future may hold with regard to this title and total compensation study, which we'll hear more about in the year ahead. UW Systems Associate Vice President Stephen Hopper presented the committee with a semi-annual report on large and vital information technology projects. This report is required by the legislature. We're going to send it over to them. He reported, I'm pleased to say, that the majority of the projects are running on time and on budget. They total the report that we're sending over about $75 million. Let me say, Mr. President, you mentioned the importance of dashboards in your opening remarks, and just a shout out to our new fairly new Associate Vice President Hopper. He has put together a very nice dashboard. I encourage you all to look at that. There's a wealth of information behind it, but the dashboard clearly indicates which projects are on time and on budget and those that need some attention. Great improvement in that area, in my view. Finally, the committee heard from Vice Presidents Kramer and Nelson with regard to ongoing projects, including the vital UW Shared Services and Restructuring Project. We're going to continue to closely monitor that one. So, Mr. President and members, on behalf of the Business and Finance Committee, I would now move approval of the UW-Milwaukee contracts, items 1-2C and 1-2D, UW-Madison's contracts 1-2E and 1-2F, and finally, 1-2H, which is the required report to the legislature on our large and vital information technology projects.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the table. Any comments? Regent Bechtel.
I'll be abstaining, as I did yesterday, on Resolution 1-2D, the contract involving Rockwell.
Thank you. So noted. Motion and second on the table. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Chair Mueller.
Thank you.
I'll now call upon Regent Klein to present a report on the actions taken by the Education Committee yesterday. Regent Klein.
Thank you, Regent President Peterson, and thank you for your comments earlier on the strong vision for the future. We at Education will do what we can to organize ourselves to really work forward to that vision. This was our first meeting of the current term, and there were new committee members. So we took a moment to review our charter, which is that Education Committee is to be in charge of consideration of all things educational, all educational matters. And it's a very broad charter. We worked in advance with system staff to determine the best way to promote educational excellence and offerings within our system. And we determined that it was time to invite the provost to rejoin the regents at the committee table, an idea that Regent Jones had put forward last term, and also that had been our practice at when we met at Van Nuys. The provosts have also agreed to another, I think, very important opportunity for oversight and monitoring and collaboration, which is to present annually the academic plan for the institution. They'll do it in sort of sequential order, or not all at once. And this will be combined with some understanding not just of what the educational plan is for the institution, but also what the strategic enrollment initiatives are that kind of are complementary to that, and how this sits with peer group. We believe that this kind of interaction will give us the best possible opportunity to work collaboratively with the provosts, who are our academic brain trusts in this university system, to ensure that we are looking forward to the goal of trying to ensure our students are getting the best possible educational offerings, and that we're organically transforming our institutions to meet workforce and economic needs. So we're very excited with this, and we're very excited with the system's staff's help to us to try to make sure we get organized. The Education Committee approved 8 degree programs. These include 3 bachelor degrees programs and 5 masters. Notably, all of these programs respond to workforce demand. They also respond to rapidly expanding professions in biomedical engineering, public health, psychology, innovation and design, strategic management, and higher education leadership. The degree programs are as follows. University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire received approval for 2 bachelor's degrees. These include Bachelor of Science in Biomedical Engineering and a Bachelor of Art and Science in Public Health. University of Wisconsin Green Bay received approval for a Master of Science in Sport, Exercise, Performance, and Performance Psychology. University of Wisconsin-Madison received approval for a Master of Science degree in Design plus Innovation. UW-Platteville received approval for a Master of Science in Strategic Management. Notably, both of these degree programs are built for working professionals who seek to develop advanced design, innovation, and strategic management skills. Next, University of Wisconsin-River Falls received approval for 2 degree programs. These include a Bachelor of Science in Biomedical and Health Science and a Master of Science in Strength and Conditioning. Finally, University of Wisconsin-Whitewater received approval for a Master of Science in Education in Higher Education Leadership. In conclusion, the committee did receive a report from Interim Vice President Karen Schmidt. She reported as to the timeline of the UW System Task Force for Advancing Teacher and Student Leaders in Wisconsin. The task force will report to the full Board of Regents on December 6th. She also reported a status update on the University of Wisconsin Digital Learning Environment Initiative. Importantly, I want to say that we are going to continue to attract these two very important initiatives because we believe that we have to continue the work of our good colleagues, Regent Jones and Regent Emeritus Millner. In addition, we have put on the committee's standing agenda that we will track the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee Freshwater Collaborative, and Provost Johannes Britz has graciously agreed to provide that update, and so that we can propel the comprehensive program offerings that we heard about at our last Regent meeting. Finally, we would note that it was Dr. Schmidt's last meeting as interim VP of Academic Affairs. We thanked her. We think it's very important that leaders within the UW system step up to serve as interim. We are also very pleased that we, Vice President or Vice Chair Manny Dietz and I have been asked to participate in interviews for the incoming Vice President of Academic Affairs, which we believe is a critical position. Accordingly, I move resolutions 1.1b through 1.1i for adoption by the board.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Thank you,
This
Chair
concludes my
Klein.
report.
I'll now call on Regent Jones to present a report on actions taken by the Capital Planning and Budget Committee.
Thank you, Regent President Peterson. The committee met yesterday and received an update on the fiscal year 2019-21 capital budget, which was recently signed into law. Act 9 provides over $1 billion in funding for 4 programs, 14 major projects, and advanced planning funds for 6 other major projects. This doesn't include any statewide all-agency funding that DOA may assign to the UW system, and which we will be aggressively advocating for. The committee considered 6 resolutions. We reviewed Resolution 1.3b brought by UW-Madison, requesting approval to enter into a lease of space for the Division of Information Technology, known as DO-IT, that will provide office space for a unit of DO-IT that does not need to be physically located on campus. Other office space on campus was considered, but there was not enough contiguous office space available. The computer science building, where the affected unit is presently located, has reached maximum capacity. The Department of Computer Science, located within that building, has recently experienced substantial enrollment growth that requires the hiring of additional faculty and instructional support staff. Moving the DO-IT unit out of the computer science building will provide space to locate the new Department of Computer Science staff, who are expected to start work this fall. We next considered Resolution 1.3c brought by UW System, requesting approval to construct 2 classroom renovation, instructional technology improvement program projects for an estimated total cost of $1.7 million, one at UW-Oshkosh and one at UW-Stevens Point. The funding will be used to upgrade existing general assignment classrooms and laboratory instructional environments, including associated furnishings and equipment to improve technology, and are expected to result in 6 appropriately sized and equipped instructional spaces. We also considered Resolution 1.3d brought by the UW system, requesting authority to construct 4 all-agency maintenance and repair projects at an estimated total cost of $5.6 million. These projects include a University Center entry and terrace renovation project at UW River Falls, a Price Commons kitchen hood replacement project at UW-Stout, a central heating plant fuel reliability upgrade at UW-La Crosse, and a budget increase to meet cost estimates of a previously approved heating plant reliability upgrade project at UW-La Crosse. We next reviewed Resolution 1.3e brought by UW-Madison, requesting authority to execute the remainder of the design contract and construct the UW-managed Red Gym renovation project for $2 million in gift and grant funds. The project renovates space within the Armory and Gymnasium, which was originally constructed in 1894, to accommodate the changing needs of student services, improve functionality, and increase space utilization. The project will renovate and reconfigure space, upgrade finishes, provide new fixtures, furniture, and equipment, and also electrical voice data infrastructure. All work will be coordinated with the Wisconsin Historical Society. We also reviewed Resolution 1.3F, requesting that we rescind and remove Regent policy document regarding 1907 regarding development of facilities in the University of Wisconsin colleges because the policy is obsolete due to the recent restructuring of the UW system. Finally, we considered Resolution 1.3G brought by UW-Oshkosh requesting authority to rename the University of Wisconsin-Fond du Lac, the University of Wisconsin-Fox Valley, and the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh. The University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh will be renamed the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh Campus. The University of Wisconsin-Fond du Lac will be renamed the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh-Fond du Lac Campus. The University of Wisconsin-Fox Valleys will be renamed the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh Fox Cities Campus. These renamings reflect the integration of the institution as 3 campuses, 1 university. The name change recommendations were developed by a team that included representatives from all 3 campuses. The university solicited support for this naming recommendation from local government and business leaders as well as through an external market position and branding study. Finally, Associate Vice President Alex Rowe also updated the committee on recent Building Commission actions that took place in late June, as well as further elaborated on which board-approved projects did not get enumerated in the fiscal 2019-21 budget. In conclusion, I'd like to move all 6 resolutions at once. Resolution 1.3B, 1.3C, 1.3D, 1.3E, 1.3F, and 1.3G.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the motions? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
That concludes my report.
Chairman Jones. For our last committee report, I'll call on Regent Atwell to present on the Research, Economic Development, and Innovation Committee's actions of yesterday. Regent Atwell.
Thank you, Regent President Peterson. Here's my summary report of the July 11th meeting of the Research, Economic Development, and Innovation, the READY Committee. Following approval of the minutes of our June 6th meeting, we heard presentations from several UW system partners and colleagues. Our first presentation was a WEDC update on industry-university collaboration. Following an introduction by Chief Operating Officer Tricia Brown, we heard from WEDC's Vice President of Sector Strategy Development, Vincent Rice, who spoke about his unit's focus on the support of key industry sectors across the Badger State economy. He noted that total WEDC investment in collaborative industry-specific projects with the UW system institutions has exceeded $4 million over the past 2 budget cycles. This investment has attracted an additional $21 million of outside match grants from business and community stakeholders. Among the WEDC UW collaborative industry-related projects is the Fab Lab initiative, which today encompasses a total of 50 community-based innovation maker spaces. These installations were pioneered by UW-Stout. Next, we heard from Buckley Brinkman, who leads the Wisconsin Center for Manufacturing Productivity, or the WCMP. Funded by WEDC, the federal government, and by private business, the WCMP engages with partnerships and initiatives across Wisconsin. Much of the assistance it provides is conducted through the Manufacturing Outreach Center at UW-Stout. During his remarks, Buckley discussed the relationship between productivity and workforce. He noted that because the tendency for humans is to adapt in a linear fashion, while technology can offer exponential improvement, WCMP believes it is beneficial to implement the right kinds of technology and to maintain a mindset of continuous improvement. Buckley's presentation was followed by an update on the UW System Idea Advance Seed Fund, which helps entrepreneurs build customer-focused businesses. Dr. Adela Yamban, the Idea Advance Director in UW System's new Idea Concierge for Innovation and Startups, offered a compelling presentation centered on the ever-evolving landscape of entrepreneurship in Wisconsin. Adela mentioned that since the 2013 inception of the program, which was under the leadership of Ray Cross while he was at UW Extension, Idea Advance has helped to launch 64 new business ventures in 18 counties across Wisconsin. This year's statistics indicate that half of new business participants in the program are led by women. Our final presentation offered a preview of the planned 2019-2020 talent development initiatives and outreach to young professionals, alumni, and veterans. Rebecca Deshane, who did a marvelous job of compressing her presentation toward the end of the meeting, she's the UW System Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation Joint Liaison for Talent Development, emphasized the 4 C's which guide her work and which are the foundation for talent development, attraction, and retention in Wisconsin. These are convening, connecting, collaborating, and communicating. In the area of veteran services, Rebecca touched on a significant number of service people transitioning into the workforce, with many of these veterans seeking additional educational opportunities. Ensuring these individuals connect with the right contacts in higher education and with business can be pivotal for both the service member as well as for the community and businesses seeking to attract skilled employees. So threaded throughout these presentations was an emerging and important dialogue about the need to think and speak more broadly about economic development. As we're operating at near effective full employment in most areas of the state, in addition to speaking about aggregate GDP growth goals, it's important to think and speak more about per capita GDP. We should be seeing income levels rise as smarter employers realize the need to undertake strategies and actions that facilitate the prosperity of the people they work with. Language matters, and it's important that our words place economic matters in their proper social and human context. I'm not accusing anybody of anything. I just sort of think we got to pay attention to our language, because people are not discrete units of production directed toward the achievement of aggregate economic goals. Ultimately, sustainable economic prosperity arises from the voluntary cooperation of human hearts and minds within the families and the communities they live. We need to think less about job creation numbers and more about facilitating prosperity in the diverse human context we find across the state, and it is very different across the state. So the committee was most grateful for the work of the people who presented and for the people who work with them in the various programs, and that concludes my report.
Guten Tag, Chairman Atwell. You know, I just want to make a final point before we pivot on to our next topic. When Vice President Greavy and I, along with system staff, gave considerable thought to how we would structure our committees, we decided that we would have all new committee chairs. And I think, as we've heard today, we've got a renewed focus and enthusiasm for the work that we do. So for all of you chairs and all of you committee members, thank you. Moving on to item 11 is a presentation and discussion about early brain development and its impacts on the economy. We're going to look at this, and it's a bit of a departure from what we can continually focus on here, but I think it's not quite as far a digression as we might think. We all know that a key feature of a thriving economy is a skilled, well-educated workforce. Research shows that investment in early childhood development and education are a critical first step in workforce development and success. And by the way, getting more people into that higher education pipeline assists with this as well. This is a keen area of focus to our former colleague, Regent Mark Tyler, who is chair of the Governor's Council on Workforce Investment and a member of the Governor's Early Childhood Advisory Council. Regent Emeritus Tyler is here to lead today's discussion, and Mark, the floor is yours. Good morning.
Thank you, Drew. I'm delighted that today we have Dipesh Nasaria and Dennis Winters to share presentations on early brain development and the impacts on the economy. I've had the opportunity to become deeply involved in higher ed over the last decade, and the most important thing that I've learned is the critical need to build a foundation for learning in the first 1,000 days of life. As I depart the Regents, I wanted to share with you what it took me too long to learn, and I'm grateful that today we have the opportunity to share this important information with you. I'll forego long introductions for Dipesh and Dennis in order to allow more time for presentation and discussion, and I'll just say that each of them in their own fields are some of Wisconsin's strongest advocates for children and the success of children. Early childhood development builds the foundation for success for our future students. Research is clear that this is the path to solving the achievement gap, which is critical in Wisconsin as we have one of the worst gaps in the nation. Please help me welcome Dr. Dipesh Nasaria, a pediatrician, faculty member, and advocate for children.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mark. I really appreciate it, and thank you very much to the Board of Regents and the UW system for this opportunity to be able to talk about work that is very near and dear to my heart in so many ways around child development. As a pediatrician, I, of course, see children in the clinic and try to make a difference for them and their families when they're in front of me, and even when they're not directly in front of me. But the other aspect that is key is thinking about the long view and about all the time children and families spend not in hospitals and clinics, and trying to make that difference for them as much as possible. So in the medical world, we always have disclosure slides, no relevant financial disclosure, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. However, I always point out that I'm never sure that if the FDA has ever formally approved mouthing as the use of board books, and you'll see why I bring that up specifically. This is my son, who's now 17. He's extremely embarrassed that I show this photograph, so I, of course, show it as much as I can. So, in our brief journey together, I'm going to talk about a few things. I want to talk about the science of early brain development. I want to talk about the result of what happens when children don't get the right start. Just touch on the principles of some solutions, and then kind of wrap up from there. So, the science of early brain and child development is something that's really been evolving over the last few decades, really. And what's really been exciting is coming from this world where we used to think of this as, oh, it's neuroscience, and, you know, talk about brain structures and how neurons wire and so on. And then you had sociologists and psychologists and almost on the other end, talking about what we see physically happening in front of us. And what we've seen is sort of a consilience, a jumping together of those fields to say, how does this help inform what we do? How does this help us say, this is how we can make a difference? And that's really what's been some of the most exciting work. So the National Scientific Council on the Developing Child, just over 10 years ago, released a report where they said, let's synthesize all this work and try to come up with some key points. And even though the report is 10 years old, every single point that I'll share with you has been reinforced by the research that's happened since then, and has been made stronger, quite frankly, and is still very valid. So the first thing they did was they said, child development is a foundation for community and economic development, right? This is the first thing they said. Because we talk a lot about infrastructure development. We talk about highways and bridges and tunnels and airports and factories and things like that, and those are all important. What we don't talk about as a part of infrastructure is the infrastructure of the early brain. How are those brains developing? How are those neurons connecting? What sorts of skills are they putting together? That is as important to our society as those very tangible physical bits of structure that we talk about all the time. Number two, brains are built over time. And this is a very short and deceptively simple phrase. This means that if you don't get it right early on, it doesn't mean that everything's lost, right? We need to continue investment even when we did get it right. You can't stop at age 3 or 5 and say, okay, we're done here, right? You know, we need to continue that trajectory. But it also means if things didn't happen right, it is never too late for there to be remediation and recovery. I want to really emphasize that. I see kids clinically periodically at the Dane County Juvenile Detention. Many of those kids are really intelligent. They're really smart. They have great perspective, but there's a lot of other factors that fed into what led to them being there. It's a lot harder to make changes later on, which is why I focus so much on the early years, but it is not impossible to make those changes at a later point. So it's sort of a three-legged stool of thinking about the trajectory of children when we look at their development and their health. One is the biological factors that we look at all the time in healthcare. Those are important. But then we recognize that the socioeconomic environment matters, that the zip code a child is born and brought up in matters more than their genetic code in terms of their health and well-being outcomes over time. But then we recognized it wasn't just the broader socioeconomic environment, that it was microenvironments. Who's at home? Who's in their early childhood center? Who's in their neighborhood? And how are those individuals interacting with that child? That these relationship and attachment patterns are the third leg of the stool that matters critically to what's going on. And that brings me to the third point from that report, that if you had to say, what are the levers we can pull, so to speak? Well, there's genes, which we can't modify so easily. I'm not going to get into that this morning. But we can modify experiences. Experiences literally affect how these neurons are wiring to one another. And we can affect those experiences through the advice we give, through the programs we set up, and through the policies that we enact. And if you had to say, what's the most important thing, if I had to say there is one thing that everything should be laser focused on, no matter what, it should be the serve and return engagement children have in relationships with loving, nurturing caregivers. Okay? Serve and return is like in tennis. You serve that ball, and then it gets returned by your partner, and you go back and forth. This engagement children have with loving, nurturing caregivers in their environment who have the ability and capacity to respond to them is what drives brain development in young children, period. Okay? There is no toy. There is no video. There is no app that will actually do any of that, irrespective of what's being marketed out there, certainly not in kids under age 3. Okay, as one of my colleagues says, there is no app to replace your lap. T-shirts in the lobby. No, okay. So this is really critical because parents are being bombarded by a huge bevy of things telling them, please put your child in front of this, it's good for them, which actually have no evidence for that assertion. And that pulls away kids from that back and forth interaction. The other piece is that parents have to be confident in that interaction and feel comfortable that they know what they're doing. And again, it's like a campfire. You need wood and you need a spark to get that flame really going together. So all those things come together. So I want to highlight this. I used to work for Edtronic at the Child Development Unit at Children's Hospital in Boston way back when I was an undergrad. And he developed this face-to-face paradigm. You're going to see what happens when a mother and child interact back and forth in a responsive manner. You'll see what happens when it doesn't go so well for a brief period, and then the recovery that happens. I'll let him explain.
Babies this young are extremely responsive to the emotions and the reactivity and the social interaction that they get from the world around them. This is something that we started studying 30, 40 years ago, when people didn't think that infants could engage in social interaction. In the still face experiment, what the mother did was she sits down and she's playing with her baby who's about a year of age.
I'm like a girl. Oh.
And she gives a greeting to the baby gives a greeting back to her.
Yeah.
This baby starts pointing at different places in the world, and the mother's trying to engage her and play with her. They're working to coordinate their emotions and their intentions, what they want to do in the world. And that's really what the baby is used to. And then we ask the mother to not respond to the baby. The baby very quickly picks up on this. And then she uses all of her abilities to try and get the mother back. She smiles at the mother. She points because she's used to the mother looking where she points. The baby puts both hands up in front of her and says, "What's happening here?" She makes that screechy sound at the mother, like, "Come on, why aren't we doing this?" Even in this 2 minutes, when they don't get the normal reaction, they react with negative emotions, they turn away, they feel the stress of it. They actually may lose control of their posture because of the stress that they're experiencing.
Okay. I'm here. And what are you doing? Oh, yes. Oh, what a big girl.
So I used to code these interactions when I was an undergraduate, and the hard part was not seeing interactions like that. That was kind of what we expected. The hard part was when the mother would go into the still face and the baby wouldn't respond at all. Why? Because they weren't used to it. They weren't used to this back and forth interaction, so the baby wouldn't feel the loss of it in the same way. Now, I want to be very clear about something. I don't believe for a moment that any of the parents in our studies, or any parents anywhere, don't love their children, don't want the best for them, don't care for them, right? This is a universal thing. There's no group that has cornered the market on loving their children better than any other group, right? So the thing is that we tell people, talk to your kids, read to them, play with them, sing to them. That's fine. You can put up the billboards, you can hand out the brochures, you can do ads on the bus, but we don't actually do a whole lot of work, as much as we could, in how to do those things. Right? We're doing information gap spanning, but we're not doing skills gap spanning. And that's where programs like home visiting and parent coaching and so on really pay off. So when someone says, play with your young baby, you say, oh, I know how to do that, and I feel confident doing that. As opposed to, am I even doing this right? And maybe I'm the wrong person to do this. So all these things really play out in key ways. We need basic skills and circuits to do more complex things. There's this scaffolding that kids need. So when people say, oh, early childhood centers, yeah, that's so that kids have some place to be while their parents work. Well, actually, it's about building these early connections, brain connections, wiring, skills, et cetera, that kids need in order to do more things later on. So if you want to think of early childhood centers as being early workforce development centers, be my guest, okay? So that's kind of what they are, This next point we'll spend just a moment on, this idea of toxic stress, which we'll define more carefully in just a moment, but it's associated with persistent effects on the neuroendocrine system, and it damages the architecture of that young brain and leads to lifelong problems in not just mental health and behavioral health and learning, but also in physical health, as you'll see. So this is a CT scan, a head CT of 2 3-year-old children. So to orient you, this is like you're looking at the head, like there's a cut this way, looking up into the brain. The child on the left is a typically developing child, okay? Loving, nurturing home, et cetera, et cetera. The child on the right is one who underwent extreme emotional neglect, okay? Not physical neglect, they were bathed and fed and clothed. They just didn't have a whole lot of interaction. This is a child from an Eastern European orphanage in the 1980s. Too many kids, not enough staff, quite honestly. Without knowing a whole lot about how to read a head CT, you can see a difference there, right? That head on the right is small because that brain is small. It looks shrunken compared to the one on the left. It's not as dense with neurons. I'm giving you an extreme contrast because you can see that easily without a whole lot of training. There's more subtle changes, which I'll show you in just a moment, that can happen when it's not as extreme, but also has deleterious effects on children. So when we have a stress response, right, we increase some of our hormones like cortisol and epinephrine or adrenaline. This is a response that's designed for when we're walking in the woods and we see a bear, right? This is a self-defense response. This is meant to protect life and limb, all those sorts of things, and really keep us alive. This is a great way of dealing with bears. It is a terrible way of dealing with everyday stress, as you'll see. Small amounts of stress are actually good for children. It's good for all of us because that's how you learn new things. Okay, if you live in a completely stress-free environment, there's no reason to change anything. So small amounts of stress are actually positive, and that's a good thing. There's things we call tolerable stress. Tolerable stress are serious, but they're temporary and they're buffered by good, supportive, nurturing relationships. Really no significant long-term effects in what we classify as tolerable. But then you have toxic. Toxic stress is when the stress response systems are activated for a prolonged period of time and as few or no of those protective, buffering relationships. And that's really what's key. So really, when you have kids who have situations where they have few or no supportive relationships, when things like child abuse or parental substance abuse or homelessness, these tend to be part of long-term patterns, and these disrupt and fray those supportive relationships. That does things to that young child's brain that we call toxic stress because of what happens. This is something that happens to young children. They're not yet equipped. They don't have the more mature coping mechanisms that even an 11-year-old might have, if things went right in their life until that point. When you're asking 1 or 2-year-olds to deal with these sorts of things, they're going for the bear response because that's the only switch they can turn to deal with what's going on around them. So this is the cycle of what happens. These stressors happen, that fight or flight response, that response that's tuned for bear goes off. They pump out these hormones. It causes some changes in the brain I'll talk about in just a second. But here's what we see. We see this hyper-responsive stress response. This is what we see in our preschools and other places, right? The kid who's out of control, this behavior that you can't understand, these little things that set them off. And we all say, what's wrong with that kid? That's the wrong question. The question should be, what happened to that kid? Right? What happened that made this a survival response that has kept them going until that day? I'm not saying it's an okay response, but that helps you figure out how to help them rather than blaming them for their behavior and so on. Quickly, 3 areas of the brain. This is work that's been done right on the UW-Madison campus by my colleague Seth Pollock. He looks at MRI scans of brains and compares their structure, the different size of different structures and activity. One is the amygdala. This is the part of the brain that lights up when that bear appears. He sees that there's larger amygdalae in kids who've had that early response, those stressors. Now, countering the amygdala, this very primal self-defensive response, are 2 areas. One is the prefrontal cortex. This is your planning, your delayed gratification, your thinking, your executive functioning, which is like the air traffic control center of the brain. There's less neural density and less activity in that part of the brain in kids who've had these early stressors. And then there's the hippocampus, which plays a big role in memory and mood. And he sees that the hippocampal volumes are actually smaller. So when you start to look at all these structures, you recognize all the behavior troubles, not all, but many of the behavior troubles that I see when I've worked in community health centers doing primary care. You start to understand what the correlates are of what's going on in the brain. And that's what I mean, is that we're able to start to piece this together. And that helps us start to understand, okay, this is where we need to intervene and make a difference. So the result actually reverberates across decades. The Adverse Childhood Experiences Study, which many may have heard of, but many still have not, looked at 17,000 adults over their entire lifespan, basically. And it took these 17,000 adults and asked them, what happened to you when you were a young child? And it was the first time that they tried to connect these things together about experiences in the early childhood up to later on. And what they found was that, again, this was not a study of those living in poverty. This was middle-class folks, many of whom had gone to college and so on. And they found that even though this was not an impoverished at-risk population, that a lot of things happened to these folks. These different types of abuse, neglect, and household dysfunction, and the prevalence of these things are the numbers appearing on the right here. These were sky-high numbers. 26% of them reported being physically abused at least once during their childhood. Even the lowest number up there is 1 in 20. And these numbers, this study has been repeated over and over. There's Wisconsin-specific ACEs studies as well, and we see about the same numbers. Now, you can't quantify how bad someone's trauma was, right? You can't put a number on that and really compare them to each other. But what you can do is how many categories of those did they say yes to? And that's how they came up with something called an ACE score. And again, about a quarter said only 1, a third none. But 4 or 5 or 6 categories of yes, 1 in 20 for each of those groups. So it was unexpectedly common, but also cumulative. And what they found was things like this, that your risk of developmental delay was virtually guaranteed when you had 5 to 7, an ACE score of 5 to 7, versus much lower if you had just 1 or 2. Look at this one. This one blew my mind. This is your risk of adult heart disease, right? 50 years later, a tripling of those odds if you had 7 or 8 adverse childhood experiences. And I could show you like 800 more slides, in this thing. But the last point from that report was that if we get it right early on, it's more effective and less costly than trying to figure it out later. So there's a few things we can do. One is we can reduce the emotional and behavioral barriers to learning and take these amazing intellects and make sure that they're not being snowed under by all these other problems. Number two, children live in families. We can't transform the lives of children if we don't transform the lives of their parents, since they are the single greatest influence on children. So we need to think about whole family and two-generation approaches. And then finally, we need to recognize that health and well-being is not just medicine's job, but really everyone's job. This is from the UW Population Health Institute. They point out that 20% of the health factors that go into health outcomes is really clinical care. The rest comes from things like health behaviors, social and economic factors, and physical environment as well. So a few quick numbers to remember very quickly. 700 new neural connections happening per second in the developing brain. We want those connections to happen well. Why? Because of brain plasticity. There's two types, synaptic and cellular. Don't worry about what they really mean, because the key is right here in this third line. Synaptic is lifelong. We are all using synaptic plasticity to learn. Cellular is already declining by age 5. Yes, those kindergartners are over the hill in at least one way. So this limits their ability to do remediation later on. This is why we don't wait to fix speech delay until someone's 8. It's easier at 3, and it's even easier at 18 months, and so on. We can see disparities in vocabulary by 18 months of age. The study showed between socioeconomic groups that there was already a pulling away of the richest kids by 18 months, and the middle class kids by 24 months. This is how young it starts, well before we even are hitting the preschool years. But as Dennis will talk about, there's a great return on investment on all of these things. I'll close by saying just one other thing. There are ways to handle these things very efficiently through other types of interventions and programs. One thing that I set up when I came here to Wisconsin is Reach Out and Read Wisconsin. This is a national program that's been around now for 30 years, and we work with primary care clinics. We train doctors, nurse practitioners, and physician assistants to use the regular checkup that kids get as an opportunity to talk to families about reading, to give them a developmentally appropriate, language appropriate book, high quality book, and to use that as part of our assessment of the child's development. This is a tool. I walk in, I give them the book from my hand directly to the child so I can watch their fine motor skills, their gross motor skills, their language, their connection with their parent. If they take that book and they turn around, they hold it out to their parent in that read to me gesture, they've just told me a lot, right? They've said, I know what this thing is. This is that thing that if I go up to my parent and I hold it out, I trust that they're going to pull me up into their lap and open the book and we're going to look at it together, and I want to do that because it's fun, right? I've learned a lot about that child and their home psychosocial environment when I see that. When I moved to Wisconsin, there was about 30 programs. The first one was founded in 1997 in La Crosse, and now we are at 240 programs because we've been able to have a statewide entity supporting Reach Out and Read. It's run through the Children's Health Alliance of Wisconsin. We receive no state funding, but we are partly funded by the Children's Hospital in Milwaukee and UW Health, as well as other systems and entities. We are actually bursting at the seams and have like 30 more clinics wanting to join. Primary care doctors are not looking for more work, trust me, yet they're knocking on our door, so to speak, and saying, we want to do this, when can we join and start? So our biggest problem right now is actually being able to continue to expand and have staff to provide technical assistance. But this essentially lets us build these strong relationships. People say, oh, you know, Reach Out and Read, it's a book giveaway program. And what I tell people is, we're actually secretly a parenting support program because of all the science that underlies all these sorts of things. So it's just one example. Home visiting falls into these categories as well as other things out there. So with that, thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to turn it back over to Mark to introduce Dennis. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So Dennis Winters is the chief economist for the Department of Workforce Development for Wisconsin and another strong advocate for children. He specializes in economics of early childhood and the positive economic impacts that early childhood investment can have both in the short and long term. Dennis?
Okay, good morning. I always see, when I see DePetch's presentation, I just always think it's pretty marvelous because I know so little about it. My part of the presentation is going to be a lot less subtle. I'm an economist by training and trade, so we're gonna lay out data and things, what it means, and how it relates to the workforce as we go forward, and why it's an important investment to make in our workforce going forward. So, it must be absolutely understood that knowledge and skills are the elements of America's and Wisconsin's economic competitiveness and success in the global economy. They needed a source for that, so they put my name on it. But it's true, has to be understood. That's where we start with everything. This is what I call my blue line, yellow line graph. And it depicts Wisconsin's population from 1960 to the year 2030 in the yellow line. And you can see from this that it's been increasing, has been for some time, and we expect it to continue to do that. This is all based on demographic data. This is very accurate data. As I say every hour, you all getting an hour older. That's not going to change. So this is about the most precise data we've got. The blue line, however, is Wisconsin's workforce. And you can see it starts to flatten out, may even go negative by 2035. We knew when this was going to happen. We knew why it was going to happen. We knew how it was going to happen. I joke the only thing we knew with more certainty was Y2K. I published on this actually in the year 2000 on the university here. So as you look at the blue line, three things come to mind from an economic perspective. One, we've never had to worry about this problem before. We've never had a flattening, much less declining workforce before. Two, it's not going away. As I say, it's all based on demographic data. We know how this works. And the third thing, from an economic standpoint, that is hugely important, is if we have a flattening workforce and we don't raise the productivity of the workforce, we can't pay them anymore. And if we can't pay them anymore, they can't buy anything else. And if they're not going to buy anything else, you're not going to produce anything else. You're not going to hire anybody else to produce product that's not in demand. So you're looking at flat through the whole economy. This is critical as we move forward. So what are some of the solutions to this? Well, you've got three solutions, essentially. You import the talent, you export the job, or you grow the talent locally. And so why do we put the focus so early on early childhood development? Third grade reading skills. I had done a lot of work in the value of higher education, and I knew that third grade reading skills were indicative of academic success. And I kind of took that as face value. Until one day when my daughter was getting a reading award in third grade. And as a dutiful father, I went in to support her, and I got down to one of those little desks, right? And the principal went on to say, this is very important. I'm thinking, yes, okay, fine. And then he went on to say that because up till now, you learn to read. From here on out, you read to learn. That's when the light bulb went off on my head, right? This is why third grade reading scores are indicative of academic success. 8 years old is the fulcrum for academic success moving forward. That's why we focus early. At 8 years old, it's a determination, very much so, on their social economic success going forward. And if a child doesn't know which end of an A is up when they come into kindergarten or first grade, that's a lot to ask of the teachers, schools, the community, the parents, everybody else involved. So I'm what I call a prenatal to age 8 guy. There's different philosophies, 1,000 days and such, because we know physiologically if you have a low birth weight, that has economic and ramifications going forward. So prenatal up to this fulcrum for early learning. This is a graph done by Professor James Heckman, Nobel laureate at the University of Chicago. He's turned a lot of his interest into early childhood development. And what this graph shows, and this happens to be for math scores, but what it shows is that by income quartile, across age, the scores are ahead in math going forward. Well, it's not too surprising here in the sense of our convention is that wealthy kids do better. They have more resources going forward. And this breaks it out that way. But what Professor Heckman did then is he adjusted for the mother's education attainment level. And those graphs came right together. Right? So the mother's education attainment level is the most significant variable going forward on a child's cognitive and non-cognitive abilities. So this is the equations I've changed around. Education is not a function of poverty. Poverty is a function of education. And it's going to be more so on and on as skills and talent are what make success in the world. So if there's nothing else you get out of my presentation today, take this with you, right? All the programs we've been using for the last 30, 40, 50 years, right, have to be turned on their head and moved this way. So education, training is key for academic and life success. So we get into the economics of it. What are the returns on early childhood development? And these numbers are pretty stark. This is from essentially the granddaddy of early childhood development studies, the Perry Preschool Project. 136 kids out of Ypsilanti, Michigan, in a double-blind controlled experiment, followed them through ages, and these are the final results on all that. We'll go into some of the detail in a minute. But the cost, and this is all in net present value terms. Okay, so all the dollars are comparable here. So the cost about $15,000 for quality education for 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds. And they followed these kids then, caught them at 27 years old and again at 40 years old, and these are the returns on that investment. Essentially it boils down to 17 to 1. Huge, huge returns. So by spending that $15,000 up front, you're getting almost $260,000 return through the life of this person. And you can see how it's broken down. In the welfare, the education, earnings, taxes paid, and the big one is crime. We'll talk a little bit about the civility part of that going forward. Huge, huge, unreplicable returns going forward in social program. This is breaking it down a little bit more. A lot less cost for special education. That's expensive. We can eliminate some of that. You can see the reading score is much higher. The fact that they graduate from high school, much more prevalent in the program group. Making a living, essentially earning $2,000 a month, owning a home, being part of the community, putting in an investment, a lifetime wealth builder, and never been on welfare as an adult. That was the results in this age group of 27. We caught them again at 40 years old, a lot of the same thing. They're making a living, they're employed to a significantly larger extent, and had a savings account. From an economic standpoint, a savings account, you've got some money in the bank, you can overcome some tough periods and things like that. From a macroeconomic point of view, right, savings equals investment. So the more in savings we've got to draw on for investments and the cost of that. Abecedarian, another study, similar type thing. Special education, a lot less. Grade repetition, much less. High school graduations, much more, and more success in higher ed. And these lists go on and on and on. The Chicago Child Parent Consortium, again, more high school, less special education, fewer grade repeaters, and less juvenile arrest. And I'm going to skip to this one and come back, because the point I want to make here, here's a list of studies that have been done, very much the same, a little bit different, study after study, doing the same kind of results. The results that come, most of the differences there are essentially through longevity. But to me, this adds power to the findings, because all these studies are coming up with similar results, right, in similar type experiments going forward. I want to come back one. A lot of this we hear, well, you got a kid, you know, you train them up, we're not going to see the results until they're 18, 20 years old. That's not true. We get immediate term results. So if you put these programs into a workplace or somewhere else, what we find is that the parents are much more productive. They show up more at work, they're absent less, they're more productive at work, and their mind is more concentrated on the work they're doing. Immediately, when they don't have to worry about their children day in and day out and have to accompany that with activities going there. Again, short term, reduced child injury and mortality and maltreatment. Medium term, reduce special education, grade repetition. It's expensive, right? And we turn to burnout teachers when there's too much of this. We've even got evidence that teachers are more productive on site when they have fewer issues they have to deal with day to day. And then long term, we look at the workforce, we look at the productivity, job growth, and earnings. So breaking that down quickly, of the breakdown in the returns, 20% of that return comes to personal success. 80% of it goes to the general public or to society. And in business, you get more skilled workforce, higher productivity, and less turnover. All things, the negative of which costs money. So, if we boil this down quickly, right, what do we need in the future workforce besides bodies? We need skilled, creative, interactive occupations. My adage on the workforce is we have a quantity problem, which will get you immediately a skills problem. If you don't have enough bodies, you won't have enough people with skills. So we have to find every body we can and get everybody trained up to their max. So what are the returns? 17-1. Can't replicate that. Low risk, long term, unduplicated. Is it fiscally prudent? Work we've done here is it's less than 0.5% of the total K-12 budget to do this work for all the 4-year-olds in Wisconsin. And what's the alternative investment? Well, it's not a new mall. You're not going to get the kind of returns on that investment that you do in early childhood development. So postponing your investments only postpones the rewards. You know, you ask an old forester, right? When's the best time to plant a tree? 20 years ago. Right? The next best time is now. So the longer we wait, right, the further out we push the returns. It's good for kids, it's good for business, it's imperative to our future in a competitive economic environment that we're facing more and more so each and every day. So that's what I've got prepared in the slides, but I want to go forward here a little bit. And if you have any questions at the material I've just presented right now, I can take those if you'd like, or we can save it somewhat.
Let's do questions when we're done, Dennis.
Okay. I just want to flip through a couple more slides here, though, Mark, because I'm not alone in all of this. And these are just quotes I've pulled from people, names many of whom you may know. Ben Bernanke, right? Previous Federal Reserve Board chairman. And I'll leave these with you. You can read these as they go forward. Mostly what I want to point out here is the people who have made these statements and who they represent. This one is my favorite. This is from David Brooks, the New York Times. By 5, he's referring to 5 years old. By 5 years old, it is possible to predict with depressing accuracy who will complete high school and college and who won't. Age 5. This doesn't even get to our 8-year-old reading part of it, right? And we've seen the experiments and can do that. You've probably heard of the marshmallow experiment and things like that. James Heckman, right? Nobel laureate here, investments in high quality education, early education, high greatest return of any social investment. And I would argue just about any other investment. Art Rolnick, retired out of the university, or out of the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis, similar things. Early childhood education is economic security, U.S. Chamber of Commerce, National Association of Manufacturers, childhood development, more productive workforce, long-term economic impact. The list goes on and on. We've got IBM directors. We've got some local folks here, Jeff Jarris, right? Used to be at Manpower. Investments in early childhood, spurring economic development. And we've been told by a number of business organizations, MMAC, WMC, quit bludgeoning us with data. We get it. What do you want us to do? How can we help? Tim Sheehy, MMAC, Tom Still, and then this famous gentleman here, right? The best and most effective way to increase the quality of our workforce and lessen the tax burden is to invest in early childhood development. And the sooner, the better. The sooner and earlier, the better. So when I get in front of business organizations, a lot of times I'll say, what are your 3 major problems? Quality workforce, tax burden, and regulation. I say, great, I can solve 2 of those problems for you. Workforce and tax burden. That tends to get their interest. We start the discussion. So that's what I've got prepared, Mark. So.
Good. Thank you, Dennis. So just a couple of quick comments. When I talk about workforce development, and one of the, as a manufacturer, we always look for a root cause analysis. And I think when we look at our demographics, I mean, the root cause analysis is we're not having enough productive sex. And as I look around the room, even if all of us committed to having more productive sex, we probably wouldn't generate much of a result. So the challenge is I don't think we're going to be able to fix that. Even if we did do that, it takes 19 years to make an 18-year-old. This is a real challenge. A couple of the most significant challenges, I think, with early childhood investment is that most organizations don't feel it's in their wheelhouse. The other challenge is that people don't understand the dramatic impact that starting early can have. So the result is the lawmakers, employers, educators, even parents don't often invest the time and the resources, and the opportunity is lost. As Wisconsin struggles with demographics impacting our workforce, we can't allow any child to not achieve their full potential. It's an economic, a social, and moral imperative that our state address this. Not investing in early childhood locks in Wisconsin's achievement gap. So with that, I'd like to open it up for discussion or questions.
I have a comment. It is fairly clear that we need parent development from what you said, because obviously the first contact is between the child and the parents, and the responsibility, whether you like it or not, is right there. And that became very clear to me, okay, from what you're saying, and it's not surprising. I don't know how to do it. Okay, but the fact is that it is very important. I have just one question for you. Maybe you can address them both at the same time. We have been facing in this board information on an increasing level of anxiety our students bring to the campuses. And it is alarming. The data that we see is a hockey stick. And obviously we're going to put more resources. We're eager to do it. However, we would like to know, I would like to know, are we addressing just a symptom, which we have to, and we will? And is there any way we can go at the cause? And I'm wondering if you have had a chance to correlate what we're seeing in anxiety in our young people, which really makes them very onerous, not very resilient, in some of the work you have done there. But anyways, take it any way you want.
Thank you. To address your first point about parents, we actually have very good data and models for the efficacy of good, high-quality parent coaching models, home visiting programs, programs like Reach Out and Read, other things that help intentionally build parents' skills. The thing we need to be careful with is how we present that. No parent, irrespective of their background, wants to be told, hi, we think you could be a better parent. Why don't you come into this program, right? It's essentially throwing shade on your parenting ability, which is not pleasant for anyone. So a lot of this comes around building trust, and also recognizing that if a parent is dealing with transportation, their own illness, being able to put dinner on the table that night, worried about losing their home, well, they're not going to be in a place to really think a lot about their back and forth interaction when they're doing all they can. So this is about building capacities of parents by making sure that that we're taking care of other needs as well. To the anxiety question, it's a great one, and we certainly are seeing that clinically in many places. And I don't know that we have one answer for that. I think certainly the amount of stressors that young adults are having to deal with, particularly college students and others, as they see instability in their families, in their communities, economic uncertainty as well. All of that can play through, I think, into a lot of anxiety. Some of it may come from coping skills that may not have developed well earlier, or some of it may be a reflection of the lack of certainty in our society. I don't think there's one straightforward answer.
Could I follow up on that question? Because this kind of dovetails into our behavioral health discussion. It's sort of a prior question to why we would be seeing increased levels of anxiety and behavioral health problems is the question of whether we actually, there is more anxiety and behavioral health problems, or whether we're just more aware of it because we're directing awareness to it. What is your anecdotal observation? Do we have more anxiety and behavioral health problems, or are we just shining a light on it and bringing forth resources? Has it always been there? It's hard to develop solutions without addressing that.
So speaking as someone who does not specialize in adolescent anxiety, but certainly sees it clinically, I think it's probably some of both. I think some of it is that people are more willing to talk about it, right? It's not as huge a prohibition, so to speak, socially to say that you suffer from anxiety, or to go and talk to someone about your anxiety or depression or things like that. I'm not arguing there's no stigma. There still is, but it's certainly not as hush-hush as it once was. I mean, the adverse childhood experiences data, I mean, the number of adults saying that they were physically abused as a child was sky high, but no one talked about it. So I think we're seeing some of that. But I also think that there's a lot of, our society has changed a lot. There's a lot more mobility. People used to get a job and often stay in that job for decades, and that's no longer the case. Longevity in job positions has changed. Knowing whether you'll have a job has also changed. I think a lot of this plays out into this uncertainty that people are feeling, and I think it may reflect more of a change, I think, in what people might call the social contract or kind of expectations that we have overall.
First of all, I just want to thank you for your presentation this morning. Early childhood development was part of my equity agenda, and I wish I could have had the two of you when I testified before Joint Finance. So my question then is, have you had an opportunity to do a presentation for our legislators?
So I have not done one for the legislature, although Seth Pollack, whose MRI work I referenced, and some of his colleagues at the Institute for Research on Poverty at Madison, I was in the room when they did their presentation, and it was virtually the same as what I shared, just a different focus and emphasis. Dennis?
Just sort of ad hoc informal meetings with legislators and such, and some committee members. They're the Family Impact Seminar for about 3 years in a row. Had national and even international experts come in and talk about early childhood development from all aspects, and the reports that came out on that. So, and with Depesh's help, you now have a childhood caucus in the legislature, which both houses, both parties. And we don't use a lot of caucuses in this legislature, but this is one they all found important enough to get started.
The Children's Caucus, we've done one-on-one meetings or small group meetings with them to share some of this information. I'm also president of the Wisconsin chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics, so we have that ability to connect with them and to be able to share this information. And I'll also just take the opportunity to say it's been a delight to be able to share this information, but also find out what else is going on throughout the state, through the UW system. I've had the privilege of speaking at the really well-regarded early childhood conferences that are held at Whitewater, and at UW-Stout. I've also spoken up at Superior, and I've worked with audiologists actually from Stevens Point and Eau Claire when we go work with the St. Croix Chippewas Head Start program as well. So we're able to also reflect that through the multiple campuses of the UW system, which is a real delight to be able to work across campuses and throughout the state.
Regent Tyler, I think President Cross would like to say a few words.
I just want to ask Depeche this question. We're dealing with, I think both Regent Delgado and Regent Atwell mentioned this, elevated levels of anxiety in 19-year-olds. And I heard about a study, I have not seen it, that involved 25 or 30 19-year-olds, and the study forced them to not participate in social media for a period of, I think, 3 weeks, as I recall. They could not watch any cable news. They were not exposed to those external kinds of things. But they were required to engage in conversations, and they had to keep a log of this. And their anxiety levels dropped enormously over that 3-week period. And my question is, to what extent do you think, first of all, I don't know if that's been validated or if that's a realistic survey. To what extent do you think the university might be helpful in helping to find ways to supplant those triggers that create greater anxiety in 19-year-olds?
And if the Wi-Fi goes out throughout the UW system this afternoon, we'll know why. No. There's a lot of excellent work that's being done on social media throughout the country, and also right here. My office right next to me in pediatrics is my colleague Megan Moreno, who does a ton of work on social media in adolescents. I would say that the data shows us that there do seem to be some associations between social media, news, the constant news cycle, and anxiety, not just in young people, but also in adults as well. However, I would also say that I think we should be careful not to say, oh, social media is the root cause of everything here. I have a whole talk on digital media that I do that points out how technological advances often get blamed for the underlying issues. I would characterize social media and cable news and so on as more as an accelerant of issues. And I think when you combine that with people reacting without thinking, and this happens across the ideological spectrum, I might point out that there's actually some really interesting work looking at how many people retweet a headline and how many people actually click through to the article to read the article, you know. No, this confirms what I believe. Let me just retweet this without actually reading the article and questioning the source and so on. So I think that all of these factors play into it, but I think we need to ask ourselves what's underneath these accelerating factors like social media and cable news and so on, and how can we build connections. It's a lot harder, I think, to scream, yell, put down someone, et cetera, when they're sitting in front of you, and particularly when you're forced to engage in a longer conversation and quote unquote live around one another. And I think those are all key things.
Regent Klein?
Quick comment. Thank you, Regent President Peterson. I want to just quickly say, great presentation, worthy topic. The only comment I would have, I was trying to think, well, what's the paradigm we can fit this into as Board of Regents? And one thought for you is the Wisconsin Partnership Program. I don't know if you've been there, but we have an endowment that is for community health grants, social determinants of health, and it might be some way to get at least some attention, some money for studies or proving the point, or even for changing the paradigm in some pilot populations. I just recommend that to you.
Thank you. Any final comments from members of the board? Hearing none, great presentation. Let's give them a round of applause. All right, at this time, we'll move to agenda item number 12, and we'll turn our attention to athletics. For the benefit of new colleagues, since 2012, the Board of Regents has called for UW institutions that participate in NCAA Division I athletics to annually provide updates to the board regarding academic, fiscal, and compliance matters. The UW system has 3 institutions with Division I NCAA athletic programs: UW-Madison, UW-Green Bay, and UW-Milwaukee. Today, we'll hear from the Phoenix Nation, UW Green Bay Athletic Director Charles Guthrie. And introducing him will be the always nimble Chancellor Gary Miller.
Thank you, Regent President Peterson, and I'm pleased to have gotten that right. This morning. We're very pleased to provide this annual report about the Phoenix NCAA Division I athletic program. Next year will represent the 50th year of this program at the University of Wisconsin-Green Bay. It was started very shortly after the university was founded. From the very beginning, it was an integral part of the Green Bay community, which, as you know, is a very sports-minded community. In fact, the inaugural chancellor, Ed Widener, required Vince Lombardi to interview and approve all of the original coaches for the Phoenix athletic program, one of whom is actually still living and helping the university. So as we've gone forward over the years, this has become a very student-focused program. It's highly competitive. We're very pleased with the student outcomes and the academic accomplishments and leadership accomplishments of our students. So leadership in this program is very important, and I want to introduce our athletic director, who's in his second year, Mr. Charles Guthrie, and he'll give you a brief summary of our program. Charles.
Thanks, Chancellor. All right. Well, good morning. Good morning. All right. Well, thanks, Chancellor. And if you poll any athletic director across the country in all three divisions, they'll tell you it starts with the chancellor. And we're really fortunate and blessed to have a great chancellor at UW-Green Bay to work with day in and day out to move our programs forward. So thanks for the opportunity. What I'll do is I'll give you a nice rundown of what's going on in Green Bay territory, and if you have questions, we can go through that. So basically, we'll start off. 608 days, I'm not counting them, just so you know, but it's 608 days on the job. We focused on 3 areas, which is the strategic revenue generation. Unfortunately, we don't have the big television contract like Madison, so we have to go out and really try to grind to make sure our Division I program is keeping up in the Division I landscape. Fan engagement is another important piece, as the Chancellor mentioned. Green Bay is a very, rabid sports community. You got the Packers up there. Division I athletics is really exciting all the time. And then effective leadership. So we'll go through strategic revenue generation. We continue to focus on our Phoenix Fund annual fund membership drive. Last year we raised about $610,000. We're continuing to try to build new members, add new members to that program and that portfolio. We celebrated a $4.9 million soccer stadium, and we just recently launched the phase 2 of the Crest Family Outdoor Recreation Complex, and that's going to include one of the first full synthetic softball fields in the state with lights, hopefully, and it'll allow us to play more games. As you can imagine, having softball in Wisconsin is pretty challenging with the weather, so we'll go there. This is a breakdown of how the dollars are used. You see the Phoenix Fund and how we generate them. The Phoenix Packers Steak Fry, that's through our great partnership with the Packers. They basically allow us to use the atrium at a really reduced cost to drive revenue for the program. We have our women's basketball outing and fast break fundraisers. So these are all community members involved in the program. We do raffles, sports-specific fundraising. We have our men's basketball golf outing. And then you see the Mark King invite. If you're not familiar with Mark King, he was the CEO of Adidas America, and he played golf at UW-Green Bay and remains active in the athletic department and also on the academic side of the house. And here you see the grand opening. It was really exciting. Aldo Santaga, one of the great coaches that came through Green Bay, and I think he might have been part of Vince Lombardi's coaching hires there. But he had a great record, and we named the stadium after Coach Santaga. A lot of people showed up. It was really exciting, so that's that. And then if you look at the project scope, it features, we have all field turf, lights. This is a softball project. It's going to have the netting, batting cages, new fields, foul poles. And I don't know if you had a chance to see Green Bay's current softball field, but it has that old chain link fence coming over like a little league field. It's really hard to win games or recruit athletes when you have a chain link fence over the back of softball. So we're trying to change that and create a different image, a Division I scope in our program. We're coming up on 50 years. We saw one of our esteemed alums win the national title in Tony Bennett. And you see Dick Bennett there and some of the greats that have come through the program. And it's exciting to, celebrate 50 years of Green Bay athletics, and we have a lot of fantastic events planned for this year. So keep an eye out. I did tease Mark Murphy about the logo. So they rolled out the 100-year logo, and they missed the playoffs. We rolled out this 50-year logo. I'm hoping we don't miss playoffs this year, so hopefully we'll have good luck with our logo. Fan engagement, you see we've got a lot of things going on. We introduced the new GB word mark. You know, when you see college athletics, you think of Oregon, you think of the O, you think of Wisconsin Badgers, you think of the moving W. So we went away from the bird kind of muddled, and we tried to come up with a consistent look and brand across all of our uniforms, and you'll see in the next slide how that's working out. We partner with our community members and our students to get a nice 6mm high-definition video board inside the Crest Event Center, and it was unbelievable for graduation. We were able to do a lot of great things with commencement with the new video board. So not only just looking at the athletic component, but also looking at how we can, engage the campus as a whole. And then we added courtside seating. We really focused on digital marketing. And then this past year, we created a fan council. It's like, you got to know how you're doing. So we went out to the community and said, tell us how we're doing. We may think we're doing great, but you need people to tell you how you're doing, and sometimes it's a hard conversation, but in the end, it helps you become a better program. And so we went out on a limb and engaged our community to tell us how we were doing, what we can improve upon, and it's working really well. We're starting to implement some of those concepts. We partnered with the WDUZ, and that was critical because our previous radio station was involved with the NFL network, with the Packer station. But this station is like that local radio station that everyone listens to, and we finally partnered with them, and it's been great. Our coaches can get in and talk about UW Green Bay, and so that's exciting. And one of the areas that the chancellor and I agreed on was we need to focus on student engagement. Students pay fees, they do a lot of things. You got to take care of them. You got to give them a return on their investment. And so we've done a marvelous job on trying to give our students as a whole, not just the student athletes, but the students as a whole, a return on their investment. So we've done these gear up games. You got to feed students if you want to come to games. You got to give them pizza, t-shirts, and get them excited. We created a new deck seating. The millennials like to stand around and be on their cell phones, as you know, at the game, so they not really want to sit in their seats. So we've kind of added that element. And then we created a nest at the rest center. And here's a look at the consistent look we've got rolled out on all our uniforms. Before, our arrival, there was, you have the volleyball team with Times New Roman letters, calibrated on the soccer team. So we basically cleaned up everything. So when you go out now, you see Green Bay and the GB, and all the colors are the right greens and right grays, et cetera. So we had consistency. It's like McDonald's. You used to see a yellow golden arch. If you have a red golden arch, you think it's an offshoot of McDonald's. So it's important. And then there's the new video board. And of course, we had to put the Horizon League champion volleyball team up there. And then you see the courtside seating. That worked really well. We were able to implement courtside seating, and it allows the chancellor and our development team to come by and meet key donors at the game without being in the stands, and we actually put all the key contributors right on the floor. And then we used our partnership with the Rest Center to get a big banner up on the Rest Center this year, and that was right across from Lambeau Field, so that's really exciting to see the UW Green Bay mark right there in a critical area of the town. And then also we got involved in digital. We partnered with Lamar on some trade, and they put digital signs up. This guy, Sandy Cohen, a Green Bay native, is now on the Cleveland Cavs roster on the Summer League squad. And then we also focused again on digital. We got involved with Alzheimer's, and that was a great event. Our volleyball coach, her mom has Alzheimer's, and she wanted to do something to assist in that area. And versus the pink out, we went with the Alzheimer's, and that worked really well. You see the coaches show on the fan, and then the gear up, of course, the gear that we focused on with the students. And there's the student hangout right there up on the party deck. And then the Phoenix Fan Council, where we talked about that. And then leadership, KB 700 wins. We gave him a contract extension. We wanted to keep him around as long as we can. One of the great coaches in all of college basketball. We hired a new assistant coach in Clyde Manns. We're excited about what he's going to bring to our program. And then Abby, of course, her first year in, won the Horizon League regular season title and the conference championship. And we went to the NCAA tournament and had to face the vaunted Wisconsin Badgers. I was like, they at least could have sent us out to Pepperdine or Stanford. Why would you send us 40 miles down to deal with a 6'8" middle blocker on the national team, So, and then we hired our coach, Jason Spain. He came from Minot. He was there for about 10 years, and he's used to building programs, and we're trying to get some gas in the women's soccer program with the new stadium to try to take it to another level. And then, of course, we just hired, with the new softball coach, we've ratcheted up and we've invested in softball. And we've got Sarah coming in, and she's actually from Milwaukee. So one of our strategies with our coaches, because retention is important, is trying to find people with connections to the region so that we're not constantly trying to find new coaches all the time. And then staff changes, we now have full-time tennis and golf. When I arrived, the chancellor and I talked about a vision to get out of the part-time business in Division I. I think it's really challenging to have part-time coaches in Division I. And we eliminated positions to try to make this happen. So we eliminated assistant AD positions, chief of staff positions. I said, we don't really need a chief of staff. We just have to go work and grind it out. We reorganized our staff to put people in place to give really talented people more opportunity to work versus just having a bloated staff. And so we've been strategic in that approach. And then looking ahead, we'll continue to push the game day experience to the next level. We're excited about the softball field, and we're going to be ready to celebrate 50 years. And I have to add, we went 6-0 against Milwaukee in men's wet basketball, women's basketball, and volleyball, and we expect that trend to continue to rise up.
Questions from Chancellor Mone? Make sure you get your parking validated. Regent Whitburn.
I have two questions. Item one, wins are important. Also very important, graduation of your athletes.
Yes.
How you doing kind of year-to-year graduation rates, getting into the done pile, the degree? How's it going?
Well, that's a great question. We actually lead the Horizon League in every category as far as there's a new academic initiative coming out by the NCAA where they're going to actually pay institutions based on, there's going to be a revenue share based on your academic success. And when they did a poll, Green Bay actually leads in all three categories, which is graduation rates, APR, and success rate. So we feel really primed about that. And just recently, our women's golf team is number 13 in the country in Division I with team GPA, and we had 5 academic All-Americans. Our women's basketball team continues to be the number 1 academic team in the country. And we're just, our total GPA is above 3.4, I think, at this point. So we really focus on academic success. I mean, we're a small but mighty team, but we take academic success as a all-encompassing project. So if you work in marketing, you still should be paying attention to academics. So it's not just putting it on one person, but we do it collectively.
I looked at the letter that you received from the commissioner. I want to read one sentence. She said, the area of most importance to address in the short term is supplying the athletics department an additional full-time individual focusing on academics. This is not the first time we've seen that recommendation. How are you addressing it?
Yes, sir. One of the handicaps for Green Bay, compared to our counterparts, is the enrollment situation. It's going up, but when you look at schools our size, we've got about 4,800 FTE versus other schools with 10,000 FTE. And what it creates is a revenue challenge for us to try to create new positions within our department. And so not having the FTE line is really difficult to address. But we've kind of looked at GA models, et cetera. We worked with our great CFO, Cheryl, in the back to try to find out how we can implement that. But we think with this new academic enhancement grant coming in, that we can take those money and reinvest in that position.
Regent Whitburn, it's worth noting that we disagree with the Horizon League on this approach. The best practice now in NCAA for mid-majors is to move athlete advising into the academic division. In fact, the University of North Carolina required that of all of their schools in that system. So there's a sort of a disconnect between what we're trying to do and what the Horizon League sees as the best practice. We believe it'd be better for our athletes to be primarily advised in the regular academic area. We think that's easier for compliance. We don't get into trouble with special cases. So we're working on both sides of that issue too. Charles is right. We do expect some more revenue for that, but we're thinking that we're still going to try to move that advising more into the academic division.
Thank you, Chancellor.
Yeah. Other questions from Regents? Regent Mueller.
Thank you. The Boy, do I not want to ask this question because there's so much energy in the room, and congratulations on all that you've done. But when I do look at your financial report for 2017-18, there were some troubling indicators, and you required a large infusion of cash from your Phoenix funds, so kudos to you for encouraging your supporters. This is for 2017-18, so my question is, how did you do in 18-19? The year is just finishing.
Well, as the Chancellor mentioned, well, again, enrollment is going to be critical for Green Bay as we go forward. As costs rise, we're an outlier. So when you look at travel, you know, we're not like UIC where we can have 10 teams come into Chicago and play or have easy flights. A lot of the costs end up being on structural, where you have rising salaries with the 2% the pay plan, and we're basically on seg fees and limited institutional support. So it really challenges in that area. So we have to continue to fundraise a lot to cover our budget. And that's just the nature of Green Bay based on our enrollment population. If our enrollment increased to 10, like I said, double fold, whereas Milwaukee, where they have a large enrollment base, then I don't think you would have this conversation. I think it'd be pretty stable. But the Chancellor and I have been working with our CFO, and I actually meet with our CFO probably bi-weekly to make sure that we're on task to be fiscally responsible and doing as best we can. We operate small and mighty.
Any final questions for Director Guthrie? If not, let's give him a round for a great presentation. The next item on our agenda, item number 13, is related to one of our Regent policies, Chapter UW-Stout 17 of the Administrative Code. In October of 2017, the Board adopted Regent Policy Document 421, Commitment to Academic Freedom and Freedom of Expression. The policy includes provisions for mandatory sanctions for students found responsible of multiple violations of the policy. In order to fully effectuate the policy, the Board must pursue changes to Chapter UW-Stout 17, which does not currently provide for mandatory sanctions for repeat violators of the policy. The process for changing administrative rules requires this Board to approve a public hearing notice on a scope statement that describes revisions to the administrative rule. This preliminary hearing and comment period is an initial step of the multi-step process, which at some point will include additional opportunities for a public hearing and for our Board to review the proposed changes to Chapter UW-Stout 17 before the eventual submission to the Governor and to the Legislature. And I might add, this will take us considerable additional time. With all of that said, may I have a motion to approve Resolution 213?
So moved.
I have a motion. Let me seek a second, and then we'll have a discussion. I have a second from Regent Bechtel. Now we'll have a discussion, and I'll turn it over to you, Regent Wall.
Thank you, Regent President Peterson. I would venture a guess that I am not the only person in this room who is distressed and sad at the state of our political discourse. I wonder at how low we've sunk on one sense, and also that we seem to have lost our ability to talk with each other and work cooperatively to come to a consensus. And I have to say that I understand where this policy came from. I understand very well the frustration that we all feel with the state of these kinds of things. I'm uncomfortable with the sanctions portion of this policy, and I'd like to address two reasons why, if I might indulge you all. The first reason I'm uncomfortable with it has to do with the fact that we have such a diverse system. And I worry about whether we can effectively and safely judge what a strike means, what a first strike means, what a second strike means, and perhaps what a third strike might mean. And is that the same thing at River Falls and Barron County and Madison and Milwaukee? The reading I've done and the research I've done, and I would like to just pause for a moment and thank the chancellors who have spoken with me and their staff members who have spoken with me to help me parse this out. And almost uniformly, what I ran across was the fact that these issues are not as black and white as we would like them to be. They're often very messy, and I worry about us getting into a situation, for example, on a third strike. If the third strike isn't quite as bad as the first and the second strike, is it really a third strike, or is it 2.5? And I think it would be so important to be consistent in that way, and in such a large and diverse system, I'm concerned about that. The second main concern I have has to do with just my personal view of the system's absolute first responsibility, which is to educate. And that should always be our North Star, I feel. And if we truly separate someone from the academy after working with them on a first strike, on a second strike, and we reach the third strike point, that tells me that there's something we could be doing better. And how lucky are we to have such an intelligent, engaged, and passionate student body here? I will take that problem any day over freedom of expression issues, which I think we can deal with, and I think the chancellors are committed, their staffs are committed. I think we can do this. I'm an eternal optimist, and I think that there's no doubt in my mind that we need to teach the young people who come to school at our universities that rights come with responsibilities, absolutely without exception. And if we don't teach them that, I fear where they will learn it. And if we really do want to raise the level of our discourse and produce a generation of people who will go out and work with folks who aren't in lockstep with them and on their views on any topic, I can't think of a better way that we can supply a future where we can all be somewhat optimistic that we can get beyond this point with each other. And so I would just close by quoting my Irish dad, who, when I wanted something I wasn't going to get, said, "Karen, the cows are out." And I think the cows are probably out on this, but I felt it was important to me to express that my comfort zone is where education comes first, and that's what we do best. Thank you.
Thank you, Regent Walsh. Other regents that would like to speak on the matter? Regent Stanford Taylor.
I just have a concern with the open hearing date of August, August 13th, and that the students are not around during that time. I know there's an opportunity to submit written comments.
That's right.
But usually out of sight, out of mind.
Okay, we'll take that under advisement. I think this was the first available opportunity we had for a hearing after having a long delay in getting it to hearing. Other regents? Regent Klein?
Yes, and I appreciate your comments, Regent Walsh. It's interesting because we do have a large and diverse system, and my view of this policy was very much informed by my interactions with one of our outstanding student leaders, Tom Kind, at University of Wisconsin-Whitewater. And I sat there with Regent Emeritus Higgins, who was really a driver behind this policy, and I was, sort of like, because Tom Kind, the student, explained that they had someone on the Whitewater campus who stood right outside of the union and was engaging in conversations that I think at least he found upsetting. And I think many students did. And so, I thought, oh, geez, my heart kind of sunk. And then it was really interesting because they were concerned about how they responded to the speaker, because they wanted to answer, but they wanted to answer with appropriate, it got to be appropriate modulation, appropriate response. And apparently at University of Wisconsin-Whitewater, they have a committee on civil discourse that kind of informed the students as to how to handle the speech that they found to be distressing. And it was actually, it kind of went full circle, because I thought, this was a wonderful learning opportunity for our students. And, in our job, and I'm going to go back to what you said, I think is right, we're training citizens. And citizens have to figure out how to disagree without necessarily being disagreeable. And that's a lost art. And so to some extent, I felt like there was, I'm not discounting your concerns, but I felt there was a lot going on campuses that really helped our students and that this actually proved to be a learning moment.
Thank you, Regent Klein. Regent Whitburn.
I certainly respect your thesis and your comments. I spoke a little on the subject at commencement at Green Bay in May, finishing my remarks, encouraging grads to step up, to be steps toward goodness on the subject of civility, noting that over the last year, less civility in Washington, less civility in state capitals around the country, sometimes in neighborhoods, and sometimes across families. I personally protested standing in the rain at UW-Oshkosh as an undergraduate, told my Regent colleagues the story when we addressed this. That said, to some extent, this is a question of tolerance, and to the extent we want to be and need to be no nonsense. Sometimes we do have troublemakers, those that are in fact determined to disrupt, to consistently detract from our key mission, which is to educate. I did support this policy when it was approved. I sense in a lot of ways this is a no-nonsense state. And the truth of the matter is, after we adopted this policy, contacts that came to me queried, what's wrong with one strike and you're out?
Thank you, Regent Whitburn. Regent Delgado.
I actually resonate to the concern for the education, because I like to focus on what the real aim of everything we do here, which is the education of people. And I'm very concerned with the debate. But above all, I am encouraged by one thing. Since we passed this policy, and probably perhaps related to it, I would like to please myself, we have had some extremely good response from everybody. This is a policy that I support with the hope that the third step is never used. That in fact, it is seen as, something that you say, in order to be able to save the environment for everybody else, you have shown that the privilege you have of being here, you cannot live up to the accountability. And I don't like to talk about children in our schools. These are not children. These are young people. These are young adults. These are fantastic people. They are selected because they have a great capacity to succeed in our schools. We don't select them to see them fail. And so from my perspective, I support it because I have the great expectation that that third step will never be used. That in fact, it will be seen that when it comes to protecting the ability of each individual to speak and listen, we are willing to say some people just don't deserve to be here. You're showing us you shouldn't be here. We do that with grades, okay? Sad to say, sometimes we flunk people out. So that's another reason. It's equivalent. We say you cannot be here. My impression is that it is necessary, and it is practical. It is important. And compared with other campuses, thank God we are doing very well. And I think this has to do with the fact that we are very committed not to tolerate any interruption of the dialogue. And I agree with you, I expect judgment, but it has to have consequences.
Seeing no other regents have interest to make comment, I would just say that this hearing that we're requesting is a regulatory requirement as part of the policy that we have on the books, and the policy that we do have on the books as it relates to freedom of expression does provide discrete and direct discipline to our chancellors, which I think we all believe is the right local approach to how we address these issues. So I would further point out that this is the first of the hearing process. We'll have at least 2 more opportunities to weigh in on the process as it goes. Sometimes your government is efficient, other times not quite so much. Nevertheless, we need to move this forward. And with that, we have a motion and a second on the floor. I would ask, are all those in favor vote by saying aye? Aye. Opposed?
No.
Motion carries. Thank you. We're now going to move on to the resolution portion of our morning. At this time, we'd like to officially recognize the service, commitment, and contributions of several colleagues, beginning with UW-Stout Chancellor Bob Meyer, who will retire on August 18th. Chancellor Meyer has been part of the UW-Stout community for decades as a student, a member of the faculty and administration, and most recently as chancellor. And I would just take a point of order to say I served as the search committee chair, and I couldn't be prouder of the selection that we made several years ago. With that, I'll call on Regent Jason Plant to read the board's resolution of appreciation for Chancellor Meyer's service within the UW system. Regent Plant.
Thank you, Regent President Peterson. It is a great pleasure to read the resolution of appreciation for service for UW-Stout Chancellor Bob Meyer, who I'm sad to say is retiring after 32 years at the institution, 5 of which as Chancellor. We wish Bob, his wife Debbie, and the rest of their family well in his retirement, but we'll also miss his innovation, leadership, and good humor, both at the UW-Stout campus and throughout the system. You know, Bob was one of the first people that reached out when I was appointed to the board, and he's done everything, you know, as a young regent you could ask for. He's guided me when there's been policy changes or controversies or anything like that on how it not only affects Stout, but the system as a whole. He's come over, he's enjoyed our Market and Johnson 70th anniversary party, and we've had, you know, beers and all kinds of great stuff together. He's just a great guy. You know, but it really kind of goes back to one of the very first events that I had interaction with Chancellor Meyer on was we were charged to organize a 10-county economic development corporation, now called Momentum West. As you can imagine, it was a public-private 25, way too many people, group trying to organize, corral, herd cats, whatever you want to say. And as you can imagine, there was all sorts of different opinions and objectives, and at the end of the day, Chancellor Meyer is one of the voice of reasons that I could always count on. He was proactive, he was collaborative, and was really one of the instigators that really helped that whole process be smooth and accepted. So I do appreciate that. Bob, I hope in your retirement that your family can utilize your cabin a little bit more. Don't be bashful about inviting your favorite regents up. I think there'll be plenty of opportunity there. But, so with that, I will read the resolution of appreciation for Chancellor Robert Meyer. Whereas Bob Meyer has served as an exemplary fashion at the University of UW-Stout for 32 years, including 5 years as the institution's 7th chancellor. And whereas Bob's career at UW-Stout began as a student in the 1970s and continued as an instructor, a faculty member, college dean, and a special assistant to the chancellor. And Bob also served in distinction for 6 years as president of the Wisconsin Indian Head Technical College before returning to UW-Stout in August of 2014 as chancellor. And whereas Bob's main goal, one of Bob's main goals, was to increase the fundraising capacity of the UW-Stout Foundation, and as a result has helped lead the foundation successfully through its first major comprehensive campaign. Whereas Bob has been diligent in strengthening and expanding UW-Stout's connection to the business and industry partners through his service on many state, regional, and local boards and commissions. And whereas Bob has promoted at every possible occasion the overwhelming success of UW-Stout students in the job market, taking pride in the fact that the employment rate has risen each year during his administration to an outstanding 98.7% this year. And whereas during Bob's tenure, 4 new undergraduate programs were added in mechanical engineering, digital marketing technology, biochemistry, and molecular biology. And video production and electrical engineering were added as computer engineering and majors. Whereas Bob has addressed the salary inequities of UW-Stout faculty and staff as a major priority in advocating with legislators and the governor and welcome the pay package enacted in 2017-2019 as helping to address those issues. And whereas Bob holds 2 degrees from UW-Stout, as does his wife Debbie, and their daughter Erica is also a UW-Stout alumna, while their daughter Melly is a UW-Madison alumna, meaning that the UW system will always be part of the Meyer family. Be it therefore resolved that the Board of Regents of the University of Wisconsin system hereby offers sincere gratitude to Chancellor Bob Meyer for his service and dedication to UW-Stout, Wisconsin's Polytechnical University, wish him well and his wife Debbie a long, happy retirement, and grant him the status and the title of Chancellor Emeritus of the University of UW-Stout. Chancellor.
Thank you, Regent Plant. And we do go back quite a ways. Worked on a lot of projects together. Also, thank you, Regent President Peterson. Got that right, and then in the right order. President Cross, and all the regents for this fine recognition. I'm humbled beyond words. I just want to take a few minutes to publicly thank some people that have been so supportive to me during my time at UW-Stout. And of course, President Cross certainly deserves many thanks for allowing me to be part of his leadership team, as well as for all the support that he's shown me in the last 5 years. These have been challenging times, and I've always felt that he's had my back. I have also been privileged to work with excellent board presidents, including Mike Falbo, Regina Millner, John Robert Bailing, and now Drew Peterson. They have been strong advocates for UW-Stout and public higher education in Wisconsin, and I have valued their contributions, as well as the contributions of all of the regents that I've been able and privileged to work with over 32 years. I've come to see firsthand what a demanding job, and it is a job, albeit with no pay, serving on this board is for you. I really want to thank you for your service to UW system and the state of Wisconsin. I also want to thank the UW system employees who support both the president and the regents. These are the people who do much of the work behind the scenes, oftentimes without a lot of credit. But I want you to know that I appreciate your valued efforts. I'm also grateful to have worked with such a fine, dedicated group of chancellors and leaders in the system. It's been a real privilege to work with you. As I leave, I wanted to share just a couple of brief observations and suggestions, or perhaps hopes, real short. Franklin Delano Roosevelt once said that there are 3 characteristics of good public speaking, which are be powerful, be succinct, and be seated. I'll try to follow his advice. The most daunting observation I have is that our fiscal trajectory is not sustainable. We cannot maintain our quality of education and meet the growing needs of our students and employers with diminished enrollments, frozen tuition, and lackluster state aid. While I'm thankful we have improved the salary situation for our faculty and staff, we are still below our peers. I've often touted, and you've heard it in Jason's summary of some of the accomplishments that I claim, our employment rate has risen every year since I've been chancellor, and it now stands at 98.7%. The real credit for that achievement should not go to the chancellor, but rather to UW-Stout's terrific staff that work day in and day out to prepare students to succeed in meeting the demands of our employers, and they are many. That is why I was pleased that the governor and the legislature chose to provide our faculty and staff a raise package in each of the next 2 years. This is movement in the right direction, but it's not enough. I often quote William E. Kerwin, a past president of Ohio State University, who once said, "You become a great university because you have great programs. You have great programs because you have a great faculty and staff." President Kerwin's statement is as profound as it is simple. The faculty and staff that I work with at UW-Stout are truly extraordinary. They deserve to be paid above, not below, the median salary of their peers. It would be my recommendation that we pursue that as a priority. I also believe that we must continue to work with our elected officials so that they all understand the value of a diploma from anywhere in this great system, and help them believe that investing in the UW system is a wise use of tax dollars. We estimate that last year's graduating class alone at UW-Stout earned $68 million in starting salaries. That is evidence of the incredible talent development going on at UW-Stout and an indication of the economic development power that is enjoyed across the UW system. Our graduates become tomorrow's inventors, scientists, entrepreneurs, business leaders, managers, and designers. They are creators of the next economy. As an example, since its creation, the UW-Stout's Discovery Center has generated over $800 million in client-reported impacts through the staff and student projects that they oversee. And UW System's impact on Wisconsin's economy was $24 billion with a B in 2018 alone. That's a 23-to-1 return on every dollar invested by the state of Wisconsin. I agree with those who concluded that Wisconsin missed an opportunity when it failed to approve Governor Evers' proposed capacity building funding. Clearly, the UW system would have leveraged that investment to increase the talent pipeline and grow the state's economy. And it's my hope that our state leaders invest in capacity building in the near future. In closing, I want to say that the UW system and the state of Wisconsin has so much potential, and it's my hope that we fully realize that potential. Like the great Lou Gehrig, today I consider myself the luckiest person on the face of the earth. There's nothing more satisfying than having worked with the dedicated and talented faculty and staff across this great system that are transforming the lives of our students and impacting Wisconsin's economy on a daily basis. So thank you for all of the opportunities that you've given me to work with you, all of the treasured memories, and all of the great moments together. It has been an enormous privilege to have worked with you and to have served as a chancellor in the UW system. I will always be Stout proud. Thank you.
Congratulations again, Chancellor. Well, having had the opportunity to recognize Student Regent Ryan Ring for his distinguished service last month has afforded me the additional opportunity to go back to back, now as I have the privilege to celebrate former Regent and Regent President Regina Millner for her exceptional years of service to this board today. Let me begin by saying, for me personally, Regina exemplifies the quintessential characteristics of class and grace. She's been a tireless and dignified advocate for the UW system, the entire UW system. While she's a Madisonian through and through, and a Badger through and through, I know of no one on this board who has called on more UW campuses to dialogue with chancellors and their cabinet members, attended more faculty and staff events, or visited with students and community leaders more often than Regent Millner. Regina is resilient and driven, but also has an uncanny ability to put people at ease. To attend these sort of meetings alongside Regina, where she usually got me to be her Uber driver, taught me the importance of being intellectually curious to all the things that we encounter on a campus, to ask good questions, to not be afraid to know all the answers, but also to be prepared and to listen. And that served me exceptionally well over the years on these numerous campus visits. Regina, with determination and grit, served as president of this board from 2013 to 2015. She has set the bar so very high for those who have followed her, and she was mentored by one of the best, Regent Mike Falbo. So, in an attempt to go above and beyond the call of duty here, I've enlisted the help of a special guest to take the podium to say a few words showcasing Regina's dedication and service to the UW system. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Regent President Emeritus Mike Falbo.
Wow. I remember this place. Good morning, and good morning to many old friends and to all the new faces I see and was listening to here, and it's fantastic. You're the people that will shape this great organization in the future. And for one old timer, I'm pretty confident. Before I talk about my dear friend Regina, though, I have a big favor to ask of Chancellor Blank. Remember, I voted for you to be chancellor. So. Sheila and I and our two grandchildren, Abigail and Oliver, skipped out of Grandparents University early today to be here. By the way, this was Regina's encouragement that got us to Grandparents University. I've spent the last 2 days living at Ogg Hall. That's not the favor I need. You have to formally excuse us from leaving early so we can graduate this afternoon. So she nodded yes, so I assume that's good. Regina, I want to talk to you about what I'll call the back nine of life. I know we played the front nine. I have vague memories of how it was back then. Remember seeing older, respected people through the years thinking that they were years away from us, and we were on the first hole. But here we are. Our friends are retired, we move slower, and we're now those older folks we used to see and respect and never thought we'd become. Things like taking a nap is not a treat anymore. It's mandatory. Because if you don't, you'll fall asleep where you sit. Regina, life is a gift to us. The way you have lived your life is a tremendous gift to those who come after. You have given a fantastic gift to all of us, young and old, and I thank you for that. But here are some things to watch on the back nine of life, since I had a little head start on that back nine. You sleep better in a lounge chair with the TV on than you do in bed. It's called pre-sleep. You tend to use more four-letter words like what and when. You know, everything they sell in stores is sleeveless. I hate that. I'm going to skip the next one. Sheila told me not to put it in anyway. I'm going to say to you, though, embrace the back nine. It is a privilege to deny it to too many good people. And the two things I want to say about Regina that I admired the most in working with her is she was so willing to share what she knows, and she was so willing to admit what she doesn't know. Those are special qualities. Regina, with much love and respect, Sheila and I look forward to teeing it up with you on the back nine of life. Cheers.
Thank you, Regent Emeritus Boby. Fitting tribute, hard to follow. As you've just heard from Mike, Regina's contributions as a leader in her own right and also as his vice president were immeasurable. In combination, the Boby-Millner ticket charted the course for many policy improvements and structural alterations, modernizing our governance that leaves a lasting legacy and will serve us, this board, so well for the future that lies ahead. So thank you both. Regina maintains boundless energy. Give her some trail mix, some fresh fruit, or half a sandwich. She can power through any committee meeting, task force, search committee, or closed session. She's our version of the Energizer Bunny, but instead of going and going, she keeps trying and trying to make our UW institutions and the stakeholders we represent world-class in teaching, learning, and the promotion of extraordinary research being done on our campuses every day. And finally, while Regina is a lawyer by trade, a business person by practice, a community volunteer and philanthropist by choice, what she's most proud of, takes the greatest satisfaction in, is being a mother to her 2 sons, who are with us here today, and a doting grandmother to her 6 grandchildren. If you follow her on any of her social media channels, and she has several, you know exactly what I mean. She values family overall. It's what's most important to her. It's what motivates her to contribute more, to invest her time more, and finally to inspire people, all of us in this room, to do more. Margaret Thatcher once said, "Watch your thoughts, for they'll become your actions. Watch your actions, because they'll become your habits. Watch your habits, for they will forge your character, and watch your character, for it will make your destiny." As we celebrate 7 years of distinguished service to the UW system in the state of Wisconsin, take great pleasure in knowing you have broadened the UW system's reputation and partnerships across Wisconsin, Washington, D.C., and the nation. And you have, without question, established your destiny of exemplary service and meaningful stewardship. So congratulations and best wishes, Regent and Regent President Emeritus Regina Millner. We could not be more proud of your success, achievements, and the dedication that you have demonstrated as a member of this board. And now, some whereases. You want me to do it from that? I'm not quite on the back nine yet, but we'll see. A couple of whereases. Whereas Regina Millner provided sound stewardship and wise counsel during her 7 years as a member of the University of Wisconsin System Board of Regents, including serving as vice president of the board from 2013 to 2015 and president from 2015 to 2017. And whereas through her service as chair and vice chair of the Education Committee, Regina initiated strategic planning exercises that led to a series of presentations on how the UW system can meet Wisconsin's workforce needs in teacher education, and called for the creation of a UW system task force on teachers and school leaders for Wisconsin. Whereas, through serving on the Audit Committee and Capital Planning and Budget Committee, Regina worked to increase the UW system's efficient stewardship of fiscal and capital resources and its responsiveness to the educational needs of all Wisconsin citizens. Whereas Regina broadened the UW system's partnerships, collaborations, and outreach as the Regent representative to the Hospital Authority Board and liaison to the Association of Governing Boards, and also served as the Regent member of the Higher Education Aids Board and the Wisconsin Educational Communications Board and the Research Park Board. And whereas Regina is a proud alumnus of UW-Madison, where she earned her Master of Science in Real Estate and Urban Land Economics from the UW-Madison School of Business and a Juris Doctor from the UW Law School, and her involvement with UW-Madison includes serving as past board chair of the Wisconsin Alumni Association, as well as serving as the UW-Madison Athletic Board representative, Wisconsin Real Estate Alumni Association, Chazen Art Museum Council, and the Madison Chancellor's Advisory Board. And whereas Regina recognized the talent, potential, and excellence of future campus leadership as a member of the Special Search Committee for UW-Madison, UW-Oshkosh, UW-Whitewater Chancellors, and she remains committed to serving as a voice for the needs of Wisconsin's system stakeholders. This would be a good time for a nap. Be it therefore resolved that the Board of Regents of the University of Wisconsin System highly commends and honors Regina Millner for her distinguished tenure, her commitment to the Wisconsin idea, and her service to the UW system, its student, its staff, and the citizens of Wisconsin. Congratulations, Regina Millner.
I am overwhelmed. First of all, I want to be very careful. We had a quote from FDR, and there was also a quote from Chuck Pruitt, who was quoting Everett Dirksen, something about everything's been said, and not everyone has said it. Well, Bob, you've said a lot of what I wanted to say, so I will simply say ditto. Thank you, Drew. Thank you, Mike, my old friend and mentor. And Sheila, it's so good to see you, and welcome to Grandparents University. I appreciate all the thanks, but my time on the board has been an honor and a pleasure, and I thank all of you for that. I've enjoyed being involved in the most important institution in Wisconsin, even as a small part, and I particularly appreciate the friendships made along the way. Just a very few observations before I depart, but I'd like to welcome our newest members to the board, Karen Walsh, who I have known before, Olivia Woodmansee, who I got a chance to meet yesterday, and Becky lives out? Becky, we haven't had a chance to meet, but welcome to the board. And particularly my dear friend Ed Manydeeds. Welcome back, Ed. The board and the state is going to be better for having you sitting at this table. 7 years ago, the answer that I gave to the Senate Education Committee's question, quote, "What do you think the challenges to higher education are today?" has not changed. Yes, we've been dealing with those challenges and movement has been made, but the challenges still remain. And a couple of examples of those challenges have been the continuous stream of new technology, new delivery systems, and innovation practices, with many more to come. Changes happening across the country as well as in Wisconsin. Changes requiring important adaptations that is often difficult. Think about it. You're asking an institution like a university to make serious structural changes. That ain't easy. Another challenge is the cost of higher education, resulting in debt for students and for their families. We're working on that too. It's not just the cost of tuition. It's time to degree, it's cost containment, it's financial knowledge for the students who are and their families who are coming to the college. The list is long. And I encourage you all to continue to work on those challenges. But what hasn't changed is the need for young students to have skill, knowledge, and competency for their first job, as well as for unknown jobs of the future. What is changing is the increasing number of older returning students who have those very same needs. Higher education has never been more important to both groups, nor to our state's economy, nor to society as a whole. To thrive in a global economy where knowledge and innovation are the cornerstones of success, we know that our state needs more college graduates in higher demand fields. In these 7 years, I've come to know that the people in the University of Wisconsin system, all of our campuses, all our faculty and staff are ready, willing, and able to help both these groups: traditional students and returning students, students graduating from high school, and students who have had other courses in their lives and now need further education. Higher education is sometimes characterized as an ivory tower, isolated and out of touch. But here in Wisconsin, and within the University of Wisconsin system, nothing is further from that characterization, and that's a truth that spans 100 years. I personally understand that truth. I came to the Board of Regents having been closely associated with UW-Madison for most of my adult life. First as a non-traditional student and holder of 2 advanced degrees, and then as an active alum. Today, 7 years, and from my vantage point on the Board of Regents, I have an even clearer knowledge of that truth. Ours is a university system that is engaged, involved, and committed to its students, and to the state of Wisconsin as a whole. Our institutions are bringing to bear the intellect, the wisdom, the innovative thinking, the work ethic of the people of Wisconsin. I have watched as institutions and their faculty, staff, and students have leveraged resources to identify and resolve key issues facing our state and facing our nation. I am so very proud of these institutions that are educating in the broadest sense of that term, the citizens and the workforce of tomorrow. Isn't this the very essence of the Wisconsin idea? An idea, a truth that is as relevant today as it was a century ago? Quote, the boundaries of the university are the boundaries of the state, unquote. And we've come to add the boundaries of the world beyond. Again, I'm working hard. It's been my privilege to serve on this board. I'd like to sincerely thank the chancellors, the provosts, the academic staff, the students, the alumni, the legislators, business and community leaders, and so many advocates and believers in the UW system that I've met along the way who continue to work for the betterment of students, family, and the people of Wisconsin. A special thanks to Governor Walker for giving me an opportunity to serve. I also want to thank President Cross, his steady hand, and the UW system team for the incredible work they do every single day. And another special thanks to Jess Lathrop and earlier to Jane Rideau, and to our Regent team, Sandra Cleveland and Megan Wesley. Your support to all the Regents is really remarkable, and for the new Regents, learn to depend on it. You will appreciate it. And finally, to my family and dear friend and partner, Nate Brand, who would have loved to be here today. Thank you for being here, both in person and in spirit. And thank you for your patience and in my absence, and your loving support over the past 7 years. Finally, got it together again. My deepest respect and gratitude to my Regent friends and colleagues, current, past, and to those of you who are just beginning this journey. You have been unstinting in your mission to serve, and it's an honor to know every single one of you. Thank you very much.
Congratulations again, Regina. Finally, the board would like to recognize Regent Emeritus Mark Tyler, who recently concluded his term as president of the Wisconsin Technical College System Board. As we all saw and heard earlier today, Regent Tyler has a passion for education and workforce development that's made him an absolute force on this board. At Mark's request, I'm inviting Interim Vice President Dave Bruchart to read the board's resolution of appreciation for Regent Emeritus Tyler's service on the UW System Board of Regents. David.
We have one more giant to say farewell to today. We had Bob Meyer, and we had dear Regina Millner, and now Mark Tyler. So thank you, Regent President Peterson, President Cross, and all of the regents here, and all of the friends of Mark Tyler who are both in this room and across the state and well beyond. It truly is a bittersweet situation here, but privilege to say goodbye to Mark Tyler in his role as Board of Regents member, friend, colleague, and someone who has had many accomplishments that would be far too much for us to talk about today. Mark is first and foremost a leader. He founded and grew a successful business in northern Wisconsin, OEM Fabricators, and his leadership has extended to his service to the Wisconsin Technical College System Board, the Board of Regents here, and to many other organizations across the state and beyond. For those of us who have worked with Mark, his leadership style has been less about who he is and more about what he does and how he does it. Quietly, collaboratively, and with an equally unassuming yet contagious optimism. He knows how to create the lift that motivates and energizes those who work with him to produce results, even when the odds are long, the resources are scarce, and the deadline's short. Mark has also been with us since the start in 2012, when the first new Regent Committee in many decades was put together by Mark Bradley and the Bradley Committee, called the Research, Economic Development, and Innovation Committee, or READY. Through his work on READY, Mark has helped us to both communicate and elevate the third mission of the university, community outreach and service, which really helps to strengthen and take the first two missions of the university of teaching and research out to the community and well beyond. And while helping to lead READY for us, Mark has kept this focus on the need to support staff, faculty, and students. Early in the process, he helped us set up the Economic Development Incentive Grants. This was a big project and one that Mark helped us lead, but in typical Mark fashion, without being asked, he wanted to read every one of the proposals that came in from around the state, and there were 56 of those. He did more work than anybody else, any of us, to make sure that the best proposals were selected to be funded across the UW system. Through the years, several of these programs have spawned what Mike Falbo would say to us is very important, ribbon cuttings, and garnering, in many cases, both national and international attention. Thank you, Mark, for helping to make these amazing outcomes happen. Mark was also instrumental in initiating and championing what became known as the UW System Regent Scholar Program, which recognizes outstanding faculty researchers and enables them to further their efforts, providing summer internships and fostering innovation across the UW system. He's a champion also of undergraduate research, technology transfer, and many related high-impact practices that help to drive student success. Through this work, much of which is overseen by WISIS and regularly reported at READY, the innovation and disclosures that are coming out of our comprehensive campuses around the state have gone from 1 per month 5 years ago to 1 per week today. Mark also represents us well wherever he goes, including one trip on short notice to China with Chancellor Dean Van Galen on behalf of the UW system, and his many visits to campuses and to communities across this Badger State. And I know that in many of those meetings, Mark would get up very early in the morning and drive down from his home to be here early in Madison or Milwaukee. And finally, it's impossible to think of Mark Tyler and not to have thoughts of family and friendship. He's a devoted husband, and his wife Jackie is here today. Jackie, thank you for all that you do. And here's an example. They say that actions speak louder than words. Last week, some individuals from universities in China were in Wisconsin, and as they were going through their schedule of places to go and things to do, Jackie said, well, why don't you just come over for lunch? And they did, and she did. So thank you, Jackie. Jackie and Mark have 2 children. They have 3 grandchildren, and they are colleagues and friends to many. Mark is a leader who can both analyze a spreadsheet and help with the delivery of a calf, a lamb, or a pony. And he's also skilled at operating a weaving loom using wool that comes from Jackie's flocks. And yet, as much passion as he's had for his many public service roles, anyone who knows Mark understands that his family roles mean more to him than any position, award, or acknowledgement. In closing, Mark, it's been an honor to work with you, to learn from you, and observe you as a quiet and thoughtful leader, someone who has helped take us to a new level here at UW System. We will miss you, Regent Tyler, but please know that you've left a lasting mark on all of those of us in this room and well beyond. So with that, I will read the whereases. And as an aside, when I start this, you'll notice that we don't call him Mark Tyler. We call him S. Mark Tyler. And like Harry S. Truman, the S has a mystery around it. And I finally, after all these years, had asked Mark what the S stands for. And Jackie said it's for Stephen. But they don't call him Stephen. The S stands for something else in Mark's life. Stuff. Mark does stuff. His Twitter handle is Stuff Tyler, and with that, I think I'll just read the whereases. Whereas S. Mark Tyler has dedicated 4 additional years of exemplary service as a regent of the University of Wisconsin system, from 2015 to 2017 as the designee of the Wisconsin Technical College system, and from 2017 to 2019 as the president of the WTCS board. And whereas Mark previously served on the Board of Regents from 2011 to 2013 as an ex officio member during his first term as WCTS board president, and has continually worked to enhance the partnership of these 2 nationally recognized public higher education systems, both of which are critical to developing a highly skilled 21st century workforce for the state, semicolon, and whereas Mark served as an engaged member of the Research, Economic Development, and Innovation, or READY Committee, including as vice chair, and also served as the selection committee chair for the Regent Scholar Grants, both leadership positions that supported research activities at UW institutions and strengthened ties between the university system and Wisconsin business. And whereas Mark served as a member of the Personnel Matters Review Committee and the Education Committee, where he helped to maintain the high-quality academic programs for which UW system institutions are known worldwide. And whereas, as chairman of the Diversity Awards Committee for 3 years, Mark has helped honor educators across the UW system for their work supporting student success for all student populations. And as a member of the Academic Staff Excellence Awards Committee, Mark has recognized the important role played by academic staff in supporting student success. And whereas Mark is currently helping to select future campus leadership as a member of the Chancellor Search Committee for UW-Stout, and whereas Mark is a lifelong advocate of education workforce preparedness and quality childcare programs, supporting the entirety of the educational pipeline and calling attention to the economic importance of investing in early childhood education, be it therefore resolved that the Board of Regents of the University of Wisconsin System hereby commends S. Mark Tyler for his continued service to the UW system and outstanding commitment to education in Wisconsin.
Well, thank you, Dave. A bit of explanation why I asked Dave and kind of broke with tradition instead of asking a regent. And the reason's simple. I required a lot of help getting up to speed. And the help that I've received as a regent has been incredible. I've been very positively impacted by a great number of people, and I wanted to highlight their incredible work. And so Dave is representing a broader group of people. Those are the folks, and I think you heard this earlier and in other remarks, but I'll repeat it, those folks that work tirelessly behind the scenes to support the work of the Regents and the university community are deserving of our praise and thanks. Their work helps our work be more impactful. It informs us of facets that we might otherwise overlook, and it provides historic and situational context that helps us make better, more informed decisions. Over my time with the Regents, folks like Dave, Laura, Jeff, Quinn, Jack, Carl, Saul, Jess, Jane, and many others have all provided in their own way, guidance, advice, encouragement, and support. These folks are representatives of a deep bench of highly effective professionals that help make the Regent roles as effective as they possibly can be. And I just want to say thank you to all of them. I want to thank our chancellors for the relationships we've shared and the many opportunities that you've provided. I'm I'm constantly impressed by what you do for our university and for our students. I'm often been baffled by, but very appreciative of the time that you've given me. I have a lot of great memories of times with chancellors, a Native American drumming ceremony, a quick trawler trip on Lake St. Croix, talking about spinning, weaving, and all things wool at Emerald Glen, breaking ground during a sleet storm, throwing bowls, blowing glass. You know, that was an interesting story when the guy said blowhard. I didn't know if he was calling me something or asking for something. Watching girls learn about science as they toss Ken in a pool with a shark swimming around. And the girls had built these boats. This was at the STEPS program at Stout, and they had to go save Ken. Sometimes I wondered if they were really trying that hard, but the boats performed flawlessly. Passing a massive grasshopper around the table, around and around and around, until it was finally small enough that one sweet-toothed chancellor could finish it off. And one of my favorite memories was participating on stage as students received degrees. Thank you, Andy, for that. There's no better feeling than that. I appreciate the opportunities I've been afforded to get to know faculty and the transformational work they do, to see research that promises to change our lives for the better, to see students find their passion and flourish. A couple of years ago, Ray asked me to fill in for him on a trip to Heilongjiang Province, a trip built on relationships that date back to 1982 and Governor Lee Dreyfus when he signed the original agreement on the establishment of relations of friendship, or a sister state, between Wisconsin and Heilongjiang. Carolyn Brady at UW River and UW River Falls have been working to rekindle this relationship and build collaborative programs. While in Harbin, Dean Van Galen and I saw incredible opportunities for collaboration. So I called Ray and I said, Ray, what am I authorized to do? And there was kind of a pause, and then in a fearful voice, just don't get me in trouble. So we proceeded to break all forms of international custom and protocol. But before we left, we had signed an MOU between Heilongjiang Department of Education and the University of Wisconsin system. I was pleased during a visit this past January by the Department of Education in Heilongjiang. The President Cross and the UW system hosted the delegation along with our technical colleges, where an additional MOU was signed with Heilongjiang and the WTCS. Last week, a delegation from Harbin, the University of Science and Technology, visited UW River Falls and UW La Crosse to discuss the next steps. I know this kind of work takes a long time. I wish I could be here to prod it along, but I trust that you will. In 10 years from now, we'll see folks from Heilongjiang sitting there like Hessen was earlier today. I realize that we have lots of relationships with international universities, but I'm a bit biased with Heilongjiang, not just because of the sister state, but we share similar economies, agriculture, forestry, manufacturing, and we have similar climates, although theirs is a bit colder, believe it or not. During my time here, if there was one thing that I wished we could have made more progress on, it would be in the area of recognizing the work that our students do in other institutions, especially our technical colleges. Students and parents just don't understand when their credits from other institutions aren't accepted. And I admit, sometimes it's justified. But I believe there's room to do better for our students. If I were to identify one area that I'm proud of the impact while being a regent, it would be in the expansion of engineering programs in northwestern Wisconsin. Even though my involvement wasn't much more than prodding and poking, this is going to be extremely impactful for our students and businesses in our region. It's already having an impact. I appreciate the collaboration of Chancellors Jim, Bob, and Dean with the Northwestern Wisconsin Engineering Consortium to help make this happen. To my fellow regents and President Cross, thank you for your friendship, for your courage and your commitment to purpose. I've enjoyed special relationships that many of us have, and I appreciate the kindness and warmth that you have shared with me. When President Riley first introduced me as a new regent back in 2011, I said that I hoped as a steel fabricator, as a farmer, as a tech college graduate, that I'd have something of value to offer. I hope I did. Finally, I want to thank Jackie. She really exists. I think a lot of you maybe just thought she was a figment of my imagination, but a few of you have met her, but no doubt all of you have heard about her ponies, her sheep, and the farm. Her trust and support and love has always been there for me and our family, and that makes for a good life. So thank you to everyone that's been a part of this great institution and letting me in for a while. I hope our paths don't cross in the future, but rather run together. Thank you very much.
Congratulations again, Mark. For our new regents, sometimes you let meetings run long, and that's exactly the reason why, to recognize the kind of contributions that we've seen out of our colleagues. So with that, do we have any communications, petitions, or memorials today? Seeing none, I'll seek a motion to adjourn. So moved. Do I have a second? Second. We stand adjourned.